Good afternoon, everyone, and once again, welcome to the live coverage of final match of the Grand Prix Hamburg. Today is officially the last classical game of the event, and if any of those players win, that might as well be last game of the event, period. So, to remind you, two players in the final, Alexander Gryszczuk representing Russia and Jan Krzysztof Duda, a young player from Poland. First game finished in a draw, was Gryszczuk having a bit of an advantage. I mean, at some point it was really advantageous position for the Russian, but Duda managed to hold his own. So first game finishes in a draw, and now young Polish player will have the white pieces. He will try to play for a win. The road for to the final for those players. So Gryszczuk overtakes one player from Poland, in fact. Keep forgetting that. So Gryszczuk has already won one match against the Polish player, against Radoslav Wojtaszek in round one. Then he has won with black against David Navara. Then he has won against Vasiela Graf. And so this is how he ended up in the final. Duda won against Nepomniachtchi and then against Yu Yangyi. And then in the semi-final, in a tiebreak, he proved to be stronger than Daniil Dubov. And the first move is made by Consul General of Russia in Hamburg, Andrei Sarashkin. It to be d4? That's a bit of a surprise, by the way. Interestingly, I keep saying that it's not always the player keeps the first move that was played by, the VIP guests. Sometimes they tend to deviate, and then, the most, perhaps the funniest example was when Karyakin was as a VIP guest to Fabiano Caruana versus Magnus Carlsen match, and Karyakin has played b2 before in one of the games, so obviously the move was not kept. From Duda, I was either expecting e2 e4 or c2 c4. But not d4, interestingly. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, repeating their game one. So interesting. I'm wondering what Gryszczuk's choice is going to be, because it would be lovely to see the same, the same position, the same opening with colors reversed. It would be interesting, but at the same time, I don't really think Gryszczuk is playing a lot of Queen's Indian nowadays. So it's more of a d5, knight c3, and then either bishop b4, which is the Rogozin defense, or bishop e7, the Queen's Gambit. Really, really interesting to see what kind of an attitude, first of all, what Duda comes up with today. Because going for the classical setup with, d4, c4, not trying for an English opening, perhaps means that he wants to be solid at first place. Because you could expect him to go for something more aggressive, but once again, when the match breaks down to the one last game, one tends to be a bit more solid than usual. Yeah, and once again, I mean, in case of a draw, we'll have a tiebreak tomorrow, and then Duda is unlikely to, to be scared of Gryszczuk's rapid and blitz skills, because Duda is known to be a very good rapid and blitz player himself. And apart from, there is one result to remember from Jan Krzysztof Duda, his fantastic silver medal in the Blitz World Championship last year. And the other thing that those two, Duda and Gryszczuk, have played a match on online server. I don't remember, was it on chess.com or something? Yeah. And to many people's surprise, Jan Krzysztof Duda has won the online match against Alexander Gryszczuk. By that time, Gryszczuk appeared to be a clear favorite, but Jan Krzysztof Duda won this match and won it convincingly. So what I'm trying to say that, of course, Duda will try to play for win with white. So no surprises here. But if a draw happens, it's not the end of the world for him. he will be, I mean, he will have his chances in the tiebreaks. Well, quite a usual thing to see. Krzysztof thinking in the opening very early, this time on move 4. So no surprise. Well, and once again, let me introduce my co-caster for today, as well as all the previous days. Welcome to people on YouTube chat of World Chess. I do try to monitor the chat. I do try to interact with the chat as much as possible. So if you have any kind of questions, suggestions for moves, and so on, you are more than welcome. And thanks for mentioning that Krzysztof is 3 times World Blitz champion. Yep. Okay. People call the, call the names of potential openings to be played in this position. Yes, really a lot depends on Krzysztof's very next move, because some people mention the Vienna variation, which is d takes c4, the Rogozin, which is bishop b4, with potential to be transposed to a Vienna variation of the d takes c4 over here. What else? Semi-Slav with c7, c6, precisely. There could have been more. There is this knight bd7, which I have hard times classifying. It's basically an attempt to play so-called Cambridge Springs variation after bishop g5, right? Or might as well be various queen's gambits, bishop f4, dc4, I believe this kind of line exists. What else we keep forgetting there? c7, c5, which would lead to semi-Tarrasch. So we have semi-Slav, semi-Tarrasch, Rogozin, Vienna, really, really a lot of stuff. But bishop e7, the classical move, queen's gambit declined. I don't remember who said that, but it's like 2 openings. Queen's gambit declined, and the Ruy Lopez. I mean, some main lines of the Ruy Lopez. Let's say the Chigorian line with a lot of understanding involved. Those were called the openings of the world champions. As long as you can play, the Queen's Gambit declined, the Ruy Lopez, you, well, still have some hope of becoming the world champion. Just kidding. Okay, bishop e7 played, bishop to f4. A few moves followed quickly. Bishop to f4, castle short, e3, knight b to d7. Very, very solid line. Some questions over there. What is Krzysztof thinking of move 4? Yeah, I believe we've discussed that, because he has, like, at the very least 5 or had, yeah, I mean, he didn't play any bishop b4 or something. He had at least 5 various options. Once again, move your c-pawn, 1 square or 2 squares. That makes already 2 possibilities. Take the c-pawn, dc4, which is 3 options, bishop b4, knight bd7, bishop e7. So technically 6 legit moves on move 4. Not sure if, if Krzysztof is like, if he has played all of those moves. But yeah, now that I'm thinking, he did play bishop b4 against Navarre in this tournament. He certainly, at some point in his career, he certainly was playing c7, c6, c5, not so much, I'm guessing. There were some semi-Tarrasch games, but Krzysztof was white in those. Okay, ended up playing bishop e7. So what we have is the very, very solid line of the Queen's Gambit, which was reintroduced to the high stage, let's say, in 2011. During the candidates matches in Kazan, Russia, there were a series of candidates matches won in the end by Boris Gelfand, with Krzysztof in the final, and Gelfand qualified to play a match against Vishy Anand, who by that time was the world champion. So the match itself took place in 2012. And in 2011, there were the series of the candidates matches. And I believe Vladimir Kramnik was the one to bring this up. The line was knight bd7. And yeah, I mean, now it's kind of lost part of its popularity, once again being replaced with the main. Once again, I have difficulties identifying which is like main move, which more standard, so to speak, and a classical. So c7, c5, it was played in 1970s, like Petrosian, Korchnoi, these kind of guys. And then knight d7 brought back by Kramnik 2011, and then once again back to c5, and now we had seen c5, for instance, in Carson Caruana match. We've seen c5 played in quite a lot of games by Hikaru Nakamura, so c5 is just yet another move. Knight bd7, though, even though it lost its popularity, I don't really know what's wrong with the move. So the move is ultra solid. The main choice for white being, well, basically c5 or not c5, right? Because apart from c5, more or less any other move was tried. a2, a3, rook to c1. Moving the bishop, I don't really... well, I mean, obviously it was tried, since this position was played billion times. It was tried, but it doesn't really do any good, I believe. Bishop e2, well, black captures, goes c5, it's very, very solid, right? What is the move after knight b5? I mean, over here, after knight b5, I suspect the move is a check on b4, and then you probably regret playing knight b5, because perhaps the best you can do is just to go back to c3, right? I mean, if anything, if for some reason bishop b4 wouldn't be available, black would have had knight e8 back. I mean, that's at the very least. But of course, bishop b4 check is the better idea. Well, there were quite a few interesting suggestions in the chat. Some questions as well. Oh yeah, there was a question if I'm coming to London Chess Classic. That's weird, because I'll be doing commentary on London Chess Classic, but it'll be in Russian, and it will be... I'll have to travel, but much further than London. It'll be from the studio in St. Louis, Missouri, and it'll be in Russian. But I will do commentary on that. Yep. Rook g1 was played by Dubov many times in this position. Yeah, nice mention. Yeah, I believe once again it has to be said that at the current stage of Queen's Gambit, the ideas with early g4 were tried practically in every single position. Like, for instance, if you think so-called Laska variation, e3, h6, right? And then white was trying this, capture and h4 followed by g4. One move later, after bishop h4, knight e4 takes on e7. There were also some tries with h4, g4, right? So it's no surprise that over here, rook g5, rook g1 followed by g4 was also tried. G4 is the very nice line. Perhaps rook g1, g4. Is g4 here? Yeah, that's I missed this question in the chat. Is g4 here a line? Well, perhaps it is. So I'm wondering, it's like, if black captures, you probably can take d5, right? Or you just go rook g1. Maybe just go rook g1. So I suspect in this case, black is reacting with dc4, so that g5 can be met with knight d5. That seems to be a legit option. g4 will be a very, very aggressive try, and I don't really think it'll be played in our game. Because if Duda wanted any of those, he could do what he has done against Shakhmammediyarov in Grand Prix Riga, which was some setup with c4, and then, wait, how was the game? I mean, something like that, just to show what could have happened if, say, if Duda wanted to play something g4-like. Bishop e7, so the bishop remains on b2, doesn't go to g5, and then some sort of this. b3, bishop to b2, queen to c2, just quickly. So this, queen to c2, rook g1, g4. So the pawn remains on d2 not to block the bishop's diagonal, the bishop on b2, right? This is far more common, I mean, connected with rook g1, g4 idea. So if Duda wanted something like that, if he would be like ultra aggressive, I would expect him to play c4 and not what he did in the game. By the way, after knight d7, he is thinking. So that means he's unsure himself. Two kind of very main lines. I mean, I don't know if it does make sense, this sentence, but kind of main lines are c5, that's one thing, where black has knight e4, that's kind of a latest trend, to go knight e4, or good old knight h5. Seemingly there is nothing wrong with good old knight h5, the move that Alexander Grishuk used to play himself. Oh no, wait, I'm confusing. No, c5 was the move of Alexander Grishuk against Kramnik, against Gelfand in those candidates matches in Kazan, and knight h5 was played in both of those games, and then it would be something like this: c7, c6, castles, black goes b6, black goes a5, black goes bishop a6. Then either bishops are trading. Well, there is b5 line, if I'm not mistaken. Ah, no, it's not here. No, forget it. It's not here. Yeah, the bishop's getting traded, and typically black has somewhat passive but very, very solid position. So this is like studied throughoutly. So c5, of course, is an option. And the other thing is you can capture on d5, where black typically takes with the knight. And then something like this happens. Bishop d3, black goes c5. You can try to get an isolated pawn, but it doesn't lead to any kind of substantial advantage, because guess what? Black plays bishop to g4, knight to e6, and then is able to push his pawn forward. Okay. Catching up with the chat, there have been quite a few questions. Oh, well, question was if I do speak any... Do I speak Ukrainian? Yeah, well, of course I am Ukrainian, so I do speak Ukrainian. Well, you know, not good enough, I'm afraid, to call it my native language, because, yeah, I mean, I used to speak Russian during the childhood years, but I do speak Ukrainian, of course, and as well as a bit of Polish, a bit of Serbian, perhaps. But let's keep the chat. Let's not make it like a mirror show, but let's keep it more connected with the game then. So still no move. No, bishop b2 was not played. That's the current position. So I just mentioned that bishop e2 perhaps would be just a waste of a tempo, right? I've started to explain that, yeah, bishop e2 perhaps was played, not on a very high level, but in this case, black typically just takes on c4, bishop c4, and then should probably just play c5 immediately, because all those positions are not that scary for black, strangely enough. Castle short, black captures over there. You probably go for the isolated pawn. Well, I mean, you can't take with the knight, and capturing with the queen probably, once again, is not that much for white. After knight b6, black trades the queens. that'd be quite a boring scenario, let's be honest. So you probably capture with the pawn, and then black is not that badly, I mean, black's pieces are not that badly placed for the isolated pawn version. Just knight b6, knight to d5, something very, very typical. Okay, so instead of bishop e2, people try to play various other moves, waiting for black to capture on c4 anyway, so that you can take on c4 in one go, basically not wasting a tempo on bishop e2. So white can try to play a waiting game with rook c1 or a2, a3. As far as I remember, after rook c1, there are various moves. And honestly, we were, when looking at this position, long time ago, I mean, once again, when the variation itself reappeared in 2011, everyone started to analyze that. And then I remember coming to a conclusion that after rook c1, c6 is not that bad, strangely enough. So that if white plays c5, rook c1 is sort of a waste of a tempo, right? Black is supposed to play c6 nevertheless in this line with knight h5, while rook c1 might be not so useful. If you all of a sudden switch to the Carlsbad, black doesn't really mind it, because, believe it or not, but once again, rook to c1 might be a waste of a tempo. Because typically in this kind of Carlsbad, you are looking for, once again, for notorious minority attack. So this rook belongs to b1, strangely, and not c1. So this position would be acceptable for black. Let me mention one more thing, which has nothing to do with our game, nothing to do with reality, but still a funny thing. Imagine, oh wait, it's white to move, right? So white goes bishop d3, rook e8, castle's short, and white decides to go knight h5, which is very well known blunder. I believe something very similar happened in 1920s, I believe, in like Alechin Rubinstein or something. That's just a very, I mean, really unlucky sequence of moves for black, because in this case, knight d5 wins a pawn you can't really capture back because of bishop c7. So once again, I don't expect this one to happen. It's just to mention that this idea is around. All right. Well, yeah, but let's wait for Duda to make his next move. So far, he's thinking on move number 7. If Krzysztof played knight b7, he's inviting g4. Yeah, perhaps. Is this first day? No, that's a second game. That's the second game. First game was yesterday, finished in a draw. We have a little video which will be shown later. The little video with the with the explanation from the players on what has happened. In fact, Sasha would hate to see g4 here. I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm not necessarily sure that Krzysztof would be like scared of g4, because if you think of him, he does seem to be that kind of player that he wants to keep it solid, seemingly, but at the same time he wouldn't mind a complex position with black. And if you think of it, he was perhaps one of the few players who has won with black, right, in a classical chess. He won his match against David Navarra in his second game with the black pieces. Well, so for those mentioning Queen C2 and Castle Long, yeah, I mean, it does exist, I believe. But once again, after Queen C2, black seemingly just plays C5, and I don't think Castle Long is such a great idea. Yeah, the problem, say, if you castle long over here, it probably does exist, but the problem is you kind of not comfortable recapturing on d4 anymore. It's like if you take with the knight, there is always e5, right? This is not your favorite version of an isolated pawn, perhaps. I mean, for this, you don't have to castle long, right? So it seems that the capture on d4 with the rook left. But then, once again, the rook is, somewhat strangely placed on d4. So I don't really think that's the good idea here, even though I do suspect it was played. I mean, as I said, that has been a very, very popular position some years back, and therefore nearly every sane plan was tried. Aha, so we once again back to the discussion who has the best chance to qualify from the Grand Prix. So far it's Krzysztof. So far it's Krzysztof. Even if he loses the final, we figured out. If he wins the final, he's already in. It's like mathematically impossible to kick Krzysztof out of the candidates. If he loses the final, then there is precisely one possibility that two of his rivals, it has to be Maxime Vachier-Lagrave from one part of the bracket. And we are discussing fourth tournament, which will happen in Jerusalem in December. So it has to be Maxime Vachier-Lagrave from one part of the bracket. And then either Mamedyarov or Nepomniachtchi from the other to meet in the final. And then Maxime Vachier-Lagrave losing the final. That's the only mathematical possibility where Krzysztof takes the third place in the Grand Prix. So it's very, very unlikely, let's agree on that. And yeah, for first place he has to lose the final where, I mean, nothing is clear. Rook to c1 was the move young Krzysztof Duda ended up playing. Well, rook to c1 was not one of the top 3 moves. Yeah, I don't really think you have to be like following the engine that closely around move 7, around move 8. I mean, it's a bit too early. It's still a bit too early. So it's, well, what I'm trying to say, yes, I mean, if the engine severely criticizes one of the moves, then you pay attention to this. Like for instance, one of our suggestions in the chat was knight b5. I suspect the engine would not be happy with this move after bishop b4 check, right? Therefore, or you know what? Bishop b4 check is fine, but it could be that c6 is even better. Like you go c6. You see what white does. If white plays knight c7, then you're happily giving a check. Will he go king e2? We'll see about it. Yeah. So if the engine criticizes the move severely, then yes, you have to pay attention to that. But if, as someone said in the chat, rook c1 is not the top 3 choice, but if like top 3 choice varies for like 0.1, like let's say white has 0.30 in top 3 choices, and then rook c1 is 0.20, the evaluation of the computer. You don't really care that much. Don't really care that much because it's like various type of positions. That's what you care about. So we could go for g4 as we figured out that, I don't know what the evaluation is. It's obviously the most aggressive setup. Then c5 is another thing. And I believe engine should typically like those positions a lot when you get the space, right? When you go c5. Engine should really love this kind of positions with space advantage. While the line that we've discussed with knight h5 is known to be rock solid for black, even though I believe even over here the engine should scream like white is much better. Okay, once again. Can Duda qualify for the candidates? Not really. Not really. A5 in Karlsbad. Yeah, there was a question if A5 in Karlsbad is bad or good for black. Well, depends. So that's what we call the Cosbot structure, right? Bishop. Okay, let's put it on g5 for the simplicity's sake. Well, typically I'd say if it stops white from advancing b4, it's actually a good move if you're able to put it like kind of to play a5 in time, right? Typically it's a good move, in fact, like restricting white's possibilities with b2, b4. So in Cosbot, once again, I don't know why we have to bring up this one, because it has nothing to do with the real game, but yeah, if so was the request. Just quickly, two possible ideas, well, technically a bit more, but let's agree on two possible ideas for white. So it's moving the knight, going f3, going e4, or the minority attack, right? So a5 takes care, certainly, of the minority attack of b2, b4 push, but if white kind of breaks in the center, yeah, it might be kind of an irrelevant move. I don't really see an example when a5 is terribly bad. Let's put it this way. So therefore, it's probably like if you can play a5, you just play it. Okay, let's go back to the actual game. Rook to c1 was played, and Grishuk replies with c7, c5. This is known to be a very, very solid system. c5 is not the best move. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Could be not the best move, but at the same time, it is a known move and it's a very, very solid move. D takes c5 played, so more or less assures that we will have the symmetrical structure over there. I suspect black can, along with knight c5, which is perhaps a legit move in this position, trying basically to transpose to something like this, right? And then bishop g4, knight e6, the ideas known from c takes d5 line. That's one thing, and the other thing, black can try to capture on c4, so that in case of bishop c4, knight c5, that's something very, very solid, very, very, I don't know if very symmetrical makes sense, but you get what I'm saying. So with open D and C files, and even if, say, white is somewhat leading development, that's typically a very solid position for black. He has to care a bit about moves like c5, c6, though, because if dc6, bishop c4 happens, then of course the damage done to black structure is not that pleasant. Grishuk recaptures on c5 with the knight, I'm guessing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's precisely, now chat has it, like not the move c5 not being the best because there was the other move which is 007 or rather 006, and now it's 007, the engine variation. People stop caring about those that match. When it will be, a difference of half a pawn, then we can say something about, yeah, that was an imprecise move, because he could have had 0-50, which is like a serious advantage already, half a pawn for those players. That's a serious advantage. And instead he went for something which is like completely equal. That I do understand, but when it's like a tiny bit, a tiny fraction, let's not care all that much, at least in the opening. So knight c5, cd5, knight d5 played. Honestly, I do not expect all that much of an excitement over there. Move number 9, I'm guessing, or something. Times, not sure it's important. We are half an hour into the game. So, well, Krishuk spent more time to do that I can give you. But, okay. Let's say 1:20 versus 1 hour 10. Yeah, precisely. It's still theory, so why the... So it doesn't have to be a conversation on like this is bad or this is good. Yeah, let's wait till they get to some sort of unknown territory, and then we can discuss. I mean, then we can discuss the moves. I'm trying to recall if there are any other moves but knight d5. Not really, perhaps, right? So there are some positions where white kind of doesn't react to knight d5, simply continues developing. But if the memory serves, I don't really think it is connected with the queen straight. So let's imagine for a second that white has played queen c2 and not rook c1. And then after c5, d takes, knight takes, c takes, knight takes, for instance. Once again, it's very silly to speculate about those because it's just a theoretical position. But what I'm trying to say that something like this, which by the way blunders knight b4, so I don't think it's a theoretical position. What I want to say that sometimes this structure is accepted by white. So not this precise sequence of moves because it was not working tactically, but sometimes this structure is accepted by white because he is, I know, wait a sec, we jump to some other silly line. That one. White is getting an outpost for this knight on e5, and black is somehow a little bit stranded there, but with not enough space. So those positions are kind of playable if you get the structure like this. With queen on e2, perhaps not queen on c2. Okay, but in our version with rook c1 and c5, c takes d5, knight takes d5. If you play bishop c4, black just trades on f4, trades the queens. And I don't really think he has anything to worry about. It's a very solid position. Potentially, with two bishops, black might dream of, of playing for a win. So that's not what you do with white. And Duda has swapped on d5, went a3. This is a very, very well-known position. I'm trying to recall what the move has to be. I suspect it's bishop g4. Suspect it's bishop g4, and then later on knight to e6, bishop to f6, going for d4, d5, d4. It's minus 0.8 after a3. Seriously? No, I don't believe this one, sorry. The clock actually looks like 110 for Duda, 125 for Krzysztof. No, it shouldn't be. Really? Because I felt like Krzysztof spent quite a lot of time on move 4, but maybe it just felt so. Sash is out of theory, taking his jacket off. Well, not necessarily. It might be just, too hot in the playing hall. Position is more than okay. I mean, I'm trying to understand how on earth could it be minus... I mean, the evaluation in black's favor in this position. There was, instead of a3, there was a suggestion for bishop e5. I believe that was tried as well. I mean, could it be that bishop e5, black plays queen a5 and then greedily captures the pawn? Because you kind of don't have a comfortable move, right? You go bishop c3, and can I take this one on a2? Black is up a pawn for a time being, and I don't necessarily see or how white's compensation is there. You don't have bishop d3, black's trading. Queen d4 would have been a nice way to provoke f6, but black has knight e6 in this case. Now, bishop e5 probably is too early. Therefore, a3 is played, right? To stop queen a5, queen a2. Chess24 engine says minus 0.57. Oh, really? Bishop d7 is best. Bishop d7, bishop a4. Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah, could it be? Because, you know, once again, I'm no expert on this particular line. And the thing is that all those moves look familiar, but it might be that already, I mean, he already has got something confused, right? a3 is the most played move in this position. Interesting. Okay, people suggest trap the queen with rook a1, wait sack in the bishop e5 line. No. You're not trapping the queen, it's queen b3, right? It's queen b3. So it doesn't really work. Would be too simple. Yeah, I do overlook a lot of simple things, but that's not in this instance. Okay, a3, and informed people in the chat claim it's bishop d7. So how does that work? If white collects the pawn, what happens? Yeah, I do understand it. It's sort of dangerous over there. But how exactly? Ah, well, you do give a check in this moment, perhaps. And then b4, queen a3, the rook is hanging on c1. Yeah, this probably ends up being really bad for white. This kind of so you probably can't take on d5. But then what on earth do you do? Because bishop a4 connect with knight b3, connect with queen a5 check. That actually might be something not very pleasant. That's really interesting. Okay, one queen b3. Ah, yeah. So bishop d7, queen d5, check, queen. Yeah, b4 is just bad. White has to go queen d2 and then some sort of queen a4, intending knight b3. Yeah, well, in such position, you do feel black is supposed to get a great compensation for the pawn, at the very least, right? Basically, as long as black stops white from natural development, which is bishop e2 and castle short, as long as white has to make some awkward moves with his pieces, black doesn't care enough about losing the d5 pawn. a3 before rook c1 is known theory. Yeah, precisely. That's what I said. So it did look familiar to me, but that's kind of a false memory, right? Because all those moves separated, like rook c1 exists, a2, a3 exists, but maybe not the combination of those two. Maybe not the combination of those two. Bishop g4 is automatic. Well, that's the trick. That's what I said. So bishop g4 is a very typical idea here, but if you pay attention to what chat says, bishop d7, interestingly, is a strong move. Seems to be. So once again, with the idea to, well, perhaps that's the easiest explanation. Bishop e2 perhaps just loses after bishop a4, right? Bishop a4, attack the queen, 2 squares for the queen, d2 and d4. d2, d4. In both cases, knight b3 similarly is very, very strong. This knight is, well, not getting trapped. No, no way. Bishop on e2 is hanging. Had to be. No, it doesn't work. So after bishop d7, bishop a4 becomes a threat. I suspect it's really, yeah, it's like you go knight d4, for instance. That's what I was thinking. Go knight d4, then still bishop a4 is there seemingly, because after b3, black has this annoying check. And the choice is pretty grim for white, right? King e2, you don't want to look at such moves. b4, black captures the queen, white captures the queen, black moves the bishop. This might be playable for white. I'm not saying that, well, actually, this is more than playable. There is knight f5, so bishop a4 is terrible. Bishop g4 has to be played to stop knight f5. This might be playable for white. But I don't think white is any better. Black will be very fast with his counterplay. Put one of the rooks to c8, so knight d3 will be a threat. Yeah, looks at the very least equal, but I believe favorable for black in reality. And the third choice was to go queen d2, but in this case, black just trades on e2, captures the pawn on b3. Bishop d3, bishop d7, rook c3 is the best, but that makes the whole thing look ugly, right? I mean, if you have to play a move like rook c3 over there after bishop d7, then it means you've already misplayed the opening. Interesting. King e2 might be playable. So once again, coming back to this knight d4, bishop a4. That was the line, yeah? Check and king to e2. Might be playable, but I mean, it's just like to illustrate that it might be playable but not great is this line. I do believe that black has better moves than knight b3, but knight b3 seems to be good enough. So knight b3, a check from b5, king f3, trade on b7. Black is up a pawn, and I don't really see what's wrong with his position, right? I mean, he has, that's a funny line. Has rook c7, bishop a3, rook b7. Yeah, rook c3 only seems to be like winning the bishop. There is this funny check from d1. It's not very often you see black playing bishop d1 and not capturing anything, but just going bishop d1 checks. It's kind of an unusual move. So rook c3 doesn't do anything good. White has to take on b7, and yeah, brings us to the conclusion there is no point in discussing this position from white's perspective. It's not a good position for white. Let's agree on this. Yeah, king e2 does look ugly. I agree. Yeah, and judging by what Krzysztof is doing, I mean, he's thinking in seemingly a well-known position. I do suspect that he understands something is not usual, right? So he did understand that it might be kind of a confused move order with rook c1 and a3 both being played. And therefore, he might identify this moment that he has to think, and maybe he'll find bishop d7. Bishop d7, bishop to d3. Yeah, but then, wait a sec. Isn't it queen a5 which is the problem after bishop d3? I'm guessing that is. No? Ah, no. There is this thing here, right? There is b4. Now, okay, let me explain, guys, what I've meant. I thought bishop d3, queen a5, b4, bishop takes b4. Sometimes it happens. You calculate the lines and you throw in an impossible move. Because bishop takes b4 would actually work. I mean, if only it would be a legit way to move the pieces. Because you take on b4, white has to go to the light square, then you take on d3 and play bishop b5 in the end. So bishop d3 might be playable, and chat agrees on that. So let's see what black is supposed to do over there. There is still like bishop a4 thing, yeah? b4, knight d3, yeah, but that's kind of less clear, right? That one's less clear. You probably go queen a4 and then a5 quickly. Maybe that's the point, yeah? Maybe that's the point. You go queen a4, and by the way, white can't castle short yet, it seems. or he can. I know, he can castle short. I thought bishop b5, but in this case, queen d1, queen a3. No. So white cannot castle. So we give, in case of bishop d3, figured out finally. Check on a5, if b4, knight d3, queen a4. Seems to be awkward enough for white. Castle is not that pleasant. Black is looking to play some sort of a7, a5. I do suspect that there should be, I mean, white is not like in a terrible position. There should be the line where white gets decent chances. But having said that, from the looks of it, at the very first moves, it seemed that Duda is trying to get something very solid, basically like to have a sort of a slight chance for an advantage, but never risk to get a worse position. And he didn't manage. Already, that's a surprising fact, but already at move 11, we are talking the position where, you know, it's white who has to be careful not to end up in a bad position. What about bishop d7, queen d5? I thought we agreed on this being very unpleasant, because b4, queen a3 looks terrible. Not only does it look terrible, it is terrible, right? Rook on c1's hanging. Any kind of rook c5 doesn't have to work because of queen b4, then take the rook. No, that can't work. I mean, with king on e1, with all those guys being on their initial squares, it simply can't work. I mean, any line like this, knight d2, bishop c5, should be in black's favor. Like for instance, there black just wins on the spot. Yeah, so queen d5, check on a5. King e2, we shouldn't really discuss in great detail. So only move left for white seems to be queen d2. And then black goes queen a4, and turns out to be very, very tricky. I mean, you probably should continue the line, though, like rook c4 in this case, and, you know, black probably goes queen b3, but it already is, I mean, you can already feel that black plays, for an initiative, black plays all the active attacking moves, while white's desirable moves would be bishop e2 and castle short, and instead he has to do some weird stuff not to lose the material. So moving rook c1 to c4, and then maybe rook c3, force the queen to a2, then move again. I mean, don't quite like it for black. Sorry, don't quite like it for white. So I don't really think queen d5 is such a great idea. Oh well, what was knight d3? In which line it was? Don't quite understand. There was one line with knight d3, queen d3, bishop b5, but which one? Anonymous, could you please repeat the knight d2 after bishop d7? But isn't it like same? No, it's not the same. Sorry. Yeah, knight d4. We said bishop a4, queen a5 check. Knight d2 is possible, but once again, I mean, it's like anti-developing move, right? Might be. No, wait. How do we do it? There is a feeling like it shouldn't work for white, but maybe you can do it. Knight d2, I mean, to be ready to meet bishop a4 with b2, b3, right? I mean, that's the whole point. All right. I get it. Yeah, thanks very much. So in bishop d3 line, there is queen a5 check, b4, knight takes, queen takes, and bishop b5. I suspect that's what you mean. Bishop b5. Oh, well, that's one funny line here. Yeah, bishop b5, queen h7, king h7, ba5, bishop a3, and so on and so on. I mean, some sort of an engine line over there. Yeah, bishop b5 is a nice move indeed, stopping white from castling short. I suspect any other move apart from queen h7, which doesn't involve the queen's trade, is just terrible. So queen h7 has to be played. I believe it's like a pleasant position at the end of it. But I don't necessarily see what's wrong with my solution to trade on d3 and go queen a4 once again. Seems to be good enough, let's say. Seems to be good enough. Maybe knight d4 in this case. Maybe that's what we turn to dislike. But still, black's position seems to be very pleasant after a7, a5, for instance. Krzysztof wants to be in time trouble. No, Krzysztof wants to play strong moves at first place. I mean, that's why he's thinking. I believe it's actually a good thing that he stopped here. I mean, good thing for him that he stopped here and understood it's something is already wrong, even though we were, I mean, some people in the chat and myself, we were saying that that's a well-known position and on the automatic bishop g4 is needed. It turns out bishop d7 is a much stronger move. Yeah, yesterday's game was a draw, answering some questions, answering some people's question what has happened yesterday. In yesterday's game, at some point, Krzysztof has missed, quite a decent winning chance. So we might as well, since it's kind of the end of the first hour, I mean, we might as well look at yesterday's interview with Krzysztof and do that if we have it, and return back after the interview to see if Krzysztof will end up playing bishop d7 or any other move.
Welcome, Mr. Krzysztof. Welcome, Mr. Duda. Your first game of the final at the FIDE Grand Prix Hamburg ended in a draw. Mr. Krzysztof, your thoughts about the game, please?
No, of course I had an advantage, but it was quite complicated and I could never transform it into something, you know, which is 100%. I definitely this position with this f pawns. Of course, it should be better for white. It's this 100%, but it's not so easy. And I thought this plan with e3 is very good, but somehow I only expected d take e3, and then he kept the pawn on d4, played f5, and then it was very complicated. And at the end, okay, I was closer to losing than to winning. Okay, I guess it was a draw, but I mean, if anything, it was closer to losing.
Mr. Duda, for sure you are now satisfied with the draw because after the opening you spent a lot of time, first of all, around 50 minutes for two moves, and then even after that you end in a worse position.
Obviously I have prepared this variation. I thought it makes sense because it's not just slight advantage for white, but some more complicated position. But of course, there are so many transpositions and move orders and etc. So that I forgot what to do because knight d5 is my move and rook c2 is also one of many possible moves. Because the problem with this variation is like that white can play 5 moves in every moment. So yeah, and of course bishop f8 was probably not good. I mean, should have been bad. Yeah, because this position looked, which happened in the game, this bishop versus knight looked very, very bad from the strategical viewpoint. But then, okay, I have active pieces, so I always have some kind of counterplay. Probably not enough, but still. Yeah, and then, okay, it was time trouble. It was kind of random, but actually I think we played quite sensibly. I mean, okay, probably computer will show improvements for both sides, for sure, I mean, but I think it was quite sensible. And then, okay, it felt like what was better, but I'm not sure, because Black always has some counterplay with this d4 pawn, or even sometimes I could have taken bishop on d4, maybe not in the moment in the game, but actually it was also the idea to have this bishop on d4. Yeah, and in the end I think it was drawish. I didn't see any way to try to win this with Black.
Okay, thanks a lot and have a nice evening. See you tomorrow.
So welcome back, guys. Well, the trick quiz interview doesn't seem to work. I mean, it worked till a certain degree. We've seen an interview. I hope you enjoyed the explanation about game one. The trick I was planning to work is that during the interview, Grishuk will come up with the move, but this didn't happen. He's still thinking after a to a3. So we are still waiting for Black's move 11 in this second classical game of the final in Hamburg. Let's go back to the actual position on the board. And yeah, guys, in the YouTube chat, I suspect it's a time to discuss the position and not the Windows Defender and other computer-related stuff. I mean, you're free to do whatever you like, but yeah, let's discuss the game instead. So one more time, what we know at the current moment, that bishop d7 happens to be a very strong move, right? And bishop d3 is the playable move, or an engine-like move, rook c3. I don't really think, even if, say, this position happens, I don't really think someone comes up with such a move as rook c1 to c3. So first, Grishuk has to find bishop d7. Oh yeah, so people continue giving other lines. Oh well, that's an interesting line, by the way. So after queen d5, a check over here, and queen d2. It happens to be not my silly queen a4 move, but just a straightforward trade, right? Trade over here, knight d2, rook, one of the rooks to c8, because I believe in our line it was rook f to c8, right? Oh, no, just rook c8, didn't mention which rook. Yeah, perhaps in this case it's rook a to c8, having some knight d3 intentions, which is surprisingly not that easy to stop, right? Because bishop c4 still runs into this silly knight d3. And you actually, if you capture on d3, you lose both rooks. So that's, yeah, after rook c8, it does seem to be really, really unpleasant. I mean, it's like you have to go knight c4 runs into b5. It's like a terrible position already. Yeah, so fair point. You don't have to keep the queens in order to have an initiative there. Yeah, rook c8 is really, 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 really strong. Queen b6. What was queen b6? What's queen b6 referring to? Oh, bishop d3, queen b6. Yeah. Over there, yep, bishop d3, and then as an alternative for black, because we were only looking at this check on a5. Yeah, perhaps have to say that the idea we had previously, the idea was bishop a4, it doesn't seem to be that strong here because white plays bishop c2. I suspect that's the explanation. You can try to keep the king in the center, but it's far less clear, right? Some knight d4 is there. I'm not sure where this one's heading. So probably what you do is either queen a5 check or the other move mentioned in the chat, queen to b6. Yeah, fair enough. It's like, once again, it might be tricky to play to navigate the position after bishop d3, but in both cases, in queen a5 check, in queen b6, it doesn't seem to be the line that would stop you from playing bishop d7. So let's say, in Grishuk's place, if I'm calculating in this position, if I'm calculating a move like bishop c8 to d7, it's very unlikely that something connected with bishop d3 will stop me from playing this move. Okay. Aha, so back to this endgame discussion. A check over here, queen d2, trade, rook c8, and then rook c3, you say stops. Yeah, rook c3 stops knight d3, but it doesn't stop something like that. Then bishop f6 happens, and once again, what do you do with the rook? No, I think it's just terrible. It's like you have to leave the d file. Oh, sorry, leave the c file. Why d? Because I thought rook d1, but then bishop a4 happens. Yeah, rook c3 runs into bishop f6 seemingly. And you don't have any kind of rook c5, bishop d6 thing because it's a check on c1 in the end, like in this line, yeah. It would work, but once again, I mean, logically, no tactic can work on the queen side as long as white still has those guys on initial squares. And bishop d7 eventually played. So he has found it. He has found it. That's, no, that's not the position. That's, once again, one of the lines of my sitting analysis. Bishop to d7 is on the board. Now, bishop d3, knight d4, so two possible moves. A b4, as some people suggest, seemingly loses by force, right? b4, it's bishop a4. Well, technically, you're alive after queen e2. But that's, well, that's not the position you want to be in. After all, white is not even a single pawn up, right? And two other squares are not available for the queen because of knight b3, right? Queen d2, queen d4, both run into knight b3. So you kind of have to play this kind of ugly move. Then, at the very least, I mean, knight e6 is not bad, but there is also knight b3 followed by a5. No, that's just a disaster. b4 is something we have to forget for a very, very long time. Grishuk, well, that's a fair observation. So Grishuk will not misplay this one because he has played a lot of tower defense. While this is not the position from tower defense, but I have to agree with the similarities of the, the character of the position, right? So, well, the isolated pawn for black, and I do believe there are some lines where this bishop d7 and later on to a4 happens, even in tower defense. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So bishop d7, once again, was not that easy to spot at first place, right? Ah, well, that's good to know, Anonymous. Thanks very much. So bishop d7, indeed, when you, that's for advanced users, let's say. So when you use your engine, and you, well, not your engine at home on your hardware, but the engine, the so-called cloud engines, which are much faster, much more powerful, right? That's one of the, one of our users in the chat uses this type of engine. And then you can see, sometimes you can see that other people reached the same position. And turns out bishop d7 was already studied by few players. You can see this if you go to a cloud engine. So that means some people are already aware of this bishop d7 move. What is the name from the analysis board? I mean, what's the name of the program, of the software? It's ChessBase, one of the versions of the ChessBase. Okay. Once again, coming back to knight d4 discussion, we figured out it's not that great. Once again, I believe, no, wait, bishop a4 first. And then in case of b3, it's a check on a5. I believe that was the problem with knight d4. Could it be that after knight d4, bishop a4, white moves the queen over there? Say queen d2, for instance. Could this be playable? Ah, no, wait. Then it's knight e4. Then it's, oh, wait a sec. So then it's knight e4. And queen d3. Oh, wait, that's something we didn't look at just yet, right? All right, so knight to d4, bishop a4. Now b3, we can conclude it to be not very pleasant because of check, right? And, okay, maybe this position is something that white can try to accept, but doesn't seem to be appealing. But yeah, after knight d4, bishop a4, there could be a try of queen d2, or queen e2 perhaps. Queen e2 once again blocking his own bishop is something not to do, but queen d2 might be the move, where white still has a hope of developing and castling short. But yeah, but once again, it's like really, really tough to achieve. There is knight e4, where queen e2 just loses. Let me illustrate that. Check from here, b4, and then some people with perverted mind would have taken on b4 with the queen, which still does win. I mean, there is obviously no point in it. You take with the bishop, it's kind of a checkmate in a couple of moves, but even queen b4 wins. Black's position is that good. So queen e2 is terrible. Queen d3 allows this, b4 as sacrifice. Once again, black is not forced to do that, but I suspect it has to work for black. And then some move like rook c8. With king on e2, it's very unlikely it will end up being good for, good for white. Even though I suspect here the game is not yet over. And king f3 and try to run away. That's kind of messy, so that might not be the actual solution from black's perspective. But once again, it does give you the idea how dangerous knight d4 is. Knight d4, rook c8, people say. Ah, so you kind of start with rook c8 first. Yeah, then b4, bishop a4 perhaps is even better. Yeah, but I wasn't sure after rook c8, I mean, what do we do after bishop e2? Ah, and then you play this, yeah. Now I got you, yeah. You play this, queen d2, you have some knight e4, perhaps winning the game on a spot. Yeah, looks terrible. Krishuk thought for 30 minutes to play bishop d7. How many moves did he analyze? Oh, well, that's a tough one to answer. Yeah, I mean, these kind of questions. I mean, how many moves did he consider, right? Or very, very typical question from chess journalists sometimes to a grandmaster. I mean, how many moves ahead you are trying to calculate? And in reality, it would be good enough to calculate 2 moves ahead. I mean, if those are correct moves, because still you spend some time thinking on every single move in the game. So that's But how many, I mean, how deep he had to calculate bishop d7? Not sure, as we figured out, some lines are quite long ones, right? I mean, in this position, yeah, knight d4 is not played just yet. Some lines are quite long ones. In some, you can't really calculate till the very end. Like, for instance, here, you just have to believe that black has enough compensation, period, right? So I don't think you calculate much longer than till that position. The moment you realize that knight d3 is a very strong threat and white kind of is uncomfortable dealing with that, it's like he'll have to play rook b1, then there is bishop f5. He plays rook a1, there is bishop f6. So really, really annoying position this one happens to be. And then perhaps you can stop right here because, yeah, I don't really think this idea of chess players being basically calculating machines and trying to work it through till the actual checkmate or the winning position is correct. So it's more of a like, you know, operating on intuition. So you calculate like few moves in the position and then you try to estimate the resulting situation. So that's very often the case. I mean, unless, I mean, there are positions where you can't get away with this method. You really have to calculate, right? Very forcing with both sides threatening the king. But in this kind of situations where it's still undefined, who's better, who's under attack, I mean, okay, in our case, white is under attack. I believe it's more of a like, you look few moves deep, and you try to evaluate the position. You don't really try to spend, like, invest all of your time calculating till the very end. Yeah, precisely this mention of Petrosian calculates one move. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm absolutely fine calculating one move deep as long as I am able to identify this is the best move in this position. So my opponent replies, and then once again I'm looking for the best move in the very next position. Who won the first game? Nobody won the first game. It was a draw. Yeah, bishop a4 is the main threat in the position, precisely. That's why bishop d7 was played. Yeah, if I'm playing this position as white, how will I choose a plan for white here? Yeah, it's not about the plan. It's really like identifying bishop a4 as the main threat and then going from there. I would be sad at first place. That's the feeling with white. Really not sure. Once again, what was the knight d2 thing? Yeah, it's like my feeling, if I'm playing this position with white, I'll probably play bishop d3. Because if it ends up bad, it ends up bad. But once again, by intuition, it's either I'm spending 50 minutes calculating everything and crying in the end because the position is already bad, or if it's a rapid chess, so I understand I can't really dig too deep. I'm playing bishop d3 because, like, I don't like the position anyway, but at least this gives me the best chance of castling short. Right? At least this move, even though it leads to an unpleasant position, it does have some positional benefits. I'm trying to develop. So I'm like seriously against defensive moves like knight d2, even though they might work. But like by intuition, you don't really play knight d2 unless you don't have any other options, right? Yeah, rook c1 seems to be an inferior move, strangely. Oh yeah, right. That's a nice mention in the chat about Kasparov's quote on calculations. You don't have to you don't have to calculate better than the others. You have to evaluate the resulting positions better than the others. It's like 3 moves deep. Typically would be, in many cases, it would be good enough. I mean, if you can calculate 3 moves deep, but identify that this is promising and the other line is like terrible, that's already good enough. So bishop d3, yeah, bishop d3, I think we've discussed that it's once again, it's not the line that white is absolutely happy with. It's just that kind of sad necessity. You have to develop the bishop in order to castle, yeah? And then people say this, yeah, I mean, that, we've identified quite a few promising options for black, right? One of them being this, in fact, or queen b6. I believe we were starting with queen b6. That was one of the guesses, queen b6. And then there was this crazy looking line. I'm not really sure what the final evaluation in this one. This one was bishop b5 and a lot of tactical tricks from both sides, where white captures on h7, captures over there, black takes on a3. Once again, I mean, this might be defendable for white, I believe, with some rook b1. Not sure where the bishop's going, and then king d2. I mean, if this is possible, then perhaps white is surviving. If I achieve something like king to d2, knight to d4, might not be all that bad. So perhaps black instead should prefer some sort of queen b6. Wait a sec, rook sack, which one? Rook takes c5. How is it possible? You mean over here? The exchange sack, rook takes c5. In the current position, no, I don't think it's such a great idea because it doesn't really accomplish much, right? So what's then? I mean, this allows you to develop, but you're an exchange down, right? So for this level of players, it's just basically resigning the game. So it has to be a bit more. Yeah, let's show the situation where this kind of exchange sacrifice would actually be good. Let's imagine, for some reason, that after bishop d3, black plays a7, a6, which is a silly move, I agree. It has some merit, though, because after castle short, the most natural reply, black would gladly take on d3, go bishop b5, win an exchange, right? So one might think of a7, a6, even though obviously that's not the best move. And then white perhaps can try to justify this. And even so, it doesn't work. I was hoping for this kind of tactic to work. And then queen c2 check, and then queen c5. But yet, still, white is lacking one move, which is castle short. And in this particular case, black wins with rook c8, followed by rook c1. So as much as I want to make up a situation where this rook c5 works, you see it doesn't. Now, white has to accomplish the development at first place. So, yeah, gotcha. So bishop d3, queen b6, rook takes c5. Yeah, but then queen takes, bishop takes. Is there anything wrong with bishop takes? I do understand you guys are probably hyped about some kind of kingside onslaught from white's perspective, right? Like knight g5, for instance, which runs into h6 seemingly. And the so-called Greek Kieft doesn't really work here because of a couple of reasons, right? There is queen g6 or there is bishop f5, like say, in this case, there is both bishop f5 or queen g6. It's very unlikely to work. Not to mention, black can as well capture on c5 with the queen, and then there is no knight g5, there is no nothing. Yeah. So overall, it's not very optimistic scenario for white. Yeah, and perhaps Duda did realize that he already has done something wrong. So far, I believe our best bet was, bishop d3, and what was what we considered to be kind of the best solution for white? What happens if we do this? b4, Bishop a4 doesn't change all that much, it seems. I know, bishop a4 is a terrible blunder, pardon me. Bishop a4, that's a terrible blunder. No, knight d3, queen d3. We can play bishop b5 to stop castle. We probably can try a7, a5, even though it runs into bishop c7. No, we probably do this immediately with black. Bishop b5, trying to keep the king in the center. But this, at the very least, it does look playable. It does look playable. Maybe white can somehow, you know, play knight d4, f3. I don't think he will have enough time, but maybe. Queen d2, with the idea to play knight d4, with the idea to play f3 and evacuate the king to f2. Looks terrible, though. Rook c8 or a7, a5 really looks terrible. Bishop b5, 5 is the line after queen d3. Yeah, seems to be. Wait a sec. In the current position, no, I don't really see how does that work. Queen a5 is best after bishop d3, but wait. We did look at this one, yeah, but then it's like before knight d3, queen d3, and bishop b5, yeah, but it's not evident that this line proves like huge advantage for black. And once again, from practical standpoint, from human view, so to speak, in such positions, you turn to believe that you want to keep the queens with black. Even though I do understand the engine might say that, for instance, this endgame is like practically winning for black. I don't really know. The endgame being queen h7 line and this, right? It could be that it's like a huge advantage for black. But during the game, when you don't have the engine, you don't have engine moves, you don't even have engine's evaluation, right? You'll be uncertain with black, and then you probably look for some possibilities where you keep the queens on the board, which does seem to be very attractive with white king not being castled just yet. So this position, I believe, like 99% of the time, a human player preferred this position over the one with the queens are traded. Yep. There is bishop c7. You mean in this, once again, in this line, bishop d3, queen b6. Thanks for mentioning bishop e5. Yeah, indeed. Bishop e5 was the option, where white seemingly does okay. Therefore, we want to go queen a5 and, yeah, provoke some weaknesses. Agreed on that. And there was, wait a sec, there was something else about this position. Yeah, if this happens, and bishop b5, queen d2, a5, yeah, there was bishop c7, yeah, I agree, but queen g6 in this case. I thought this has to work for black. Queen c7, bishop c7 attacking the queen g6 attacking a very important spot in white's position, which is the g2 pawn. It's really, really awkward, right? What they do then? Yeah, it's like g2's hanging, really terrible. Believe white has to be lost this way or another. I mean, just once again, I don't know if we need to dig over there any further, but just like for fun, I suspect rook a2 might work. After queen a2, it's a check from b4. You need to put this knight over there. And then queen d3. You don't need it with black. Once again, don't get me wrong. I mean, black probably could have won in the other way, but this line is entertaining and seemingly working for black. Yeah, queen e2 is not possible to stop. Overall, it gives us an idea on how unpleasant Duda's position is. Okay, there was one more mention on bishop d3, queen b6. Yeah, bishop d3, queen b6. I suspect bishop e5 is what black doesn't like all that much, even though this still stops the short castle, but maybe it's not as simple as it would seem. Because queen d4, queen g6, well, not f6 obviously, queen g6, right? Because you kind of have to keep the queens, or at least try to keep the queens on the board, and as well you have to guard g7. So queen over there, and then as surprising as it might seem, now I was thinking king d2, but it doesn't work, right? King d2 doesn't work, black captures on g2. But then even this position is probably good for black. Unless you play rook g1, but that's ugly, once again. So far, having difficulties finding decent follow-up for white. Bishop e5 at first place. Bishop e5 at first place. Instead of bishop d3. There was something wrong with this one as well. Don't quite remember, but... yeah, bishop d5 runs into this, right? Bishop a4. And then you can't play queen d2 or queen d4 because of knight b3, so you end up playing this move. And then once again, rook c8 happens, threatening knight d2. We might as well conclude that this is not the line you're happy with for white, with queen obstructing the development of the bishop from f1. Update on the clock time, it's 45 minutes for Duda, 56 minutes for Alexander Krysiak. Why not capture the d-pawn? We've discussed this already. I believe if white captures on d5, that is the main problematic line, queen a5 check. b4 being bad because of queen a3, and queen d2, as we were informed in the chat, being not so great because of this line. It's not a big advantage for black in every line after bishop d3. That's interesting. That's interesting. So you guys suggest that bishop d3 is the move then for white, and nothing terrible happened just yet. In all those lines, it's like few options for black to get a pleasant endgame, but not much more than that. Anyhow, Duda doesn't seem to be very happy about his position. What else? In the chat, there was a question, who's my favorite player, strangely enough, from the Soviet school, right? Was there? Yeah, there was such a question. I'm not quite sure, because, I mean, it's like Tal would be the obvious answer. But now that I'm thinking, do we consider Garry Kasparov being a Soviet school? If the answer is yes, then I'll go with Garry. There are quite a few. It's once again, it's not the... I mean, it's really hard to limit myself to only one name. That there've been a lot of great players. Well, few words on chess development after 10 years from now. Hard to say. I mean, it'll get like more and more drawers. That's what I'm afraid of. I mean, if you're talking like deep preparation for the game and classical time controls, it'll be the margin for an error will be narrowed to, it's like, you know, drag your opponent into unfamiliar territory. That'll be the only chance to win the game. So one will have to gamble, perhaps going for like second-rate lines just to destabilize the situation. Otherwise, everything's going to be thoroughly started in 10 years. But we might still play blitzes, rapids. We might switch to Fischer random, maybe. Yeah. Trying to see if there is anything game-related in the chat. Not so much. Yeah, precisely. Rook c1 was wrong move order, it seems to be. Or, no, wait. Rook c1 is a legit move. It's like the combination of Rook c1 and a3, and interestingly, it was played relatively quickly, is, strangely enough, not the best combination of moves in this position. And one of those moves had to be substituted for bishop f1 to e2 move, I suspect. So it's a kind of rook c1, bishop e2 looks playable, a3, bishop e2 looks playable, but not the combination of a3 and rook c1. And since rook c1 happened before a3, I believe rook c1 is a legit move in this position, just that after c5 you do not react in the way Duda reacted. So this is not the ideal setup then. When you capture on d5, you probably just... Yeah, well, it's hard to suggest a move, though, instead of a3, because queen a5, queen a2, as we were discussing, is the legit option. So yeah, remember us looking at bishop a5, check, bishop c3, queen a2. That was the line we've discussed, and that turns out rook a1 doesn't trap the queen because of queen b3. Yeah, so perhaps already there, as like if you face, after rook c1, if you face c5, maybe this is not the reaction white needed to go for. Because when this happens on the board, yes, a3 happens to be not a great idea after bishop d7, but then, once again, what else do you do? Well, in this line that I've shown, yeah, wait a second. So once again, a3, bishop d7, I suspect chat debends this line. Yeah, queen takes d5, check. And what was the suggestion? b7, b2, b4, queen a3, rook c5. You mean black is hanging his bishop on d7. But now, I think we've discussed that white kind of loses after queen b4. Because knight d2, bishop c5, you can't actually take on d7. I think we've discussed this line, unless I'm like missing a move here, but I don't really see what can you do. You could, wait a sec, over here, you could try to move the king, but once again, I don't believe it's possible, right? King e2, bishop c5, queen takes. No, we should not be discussing this position seriously. It's like, again, it's got to be checkmate in a couple of moves in this position. So now, black is not hanging his bishop on d7. Is there a way to develop light square bishop instead of a3, like bishop e2, for instance? But then again, what do we do in case of such check? Well, technically, I think I have it. Like, if you play bishop e5, check, and you go knight d2, then, finally, this pawn on a2 cannot be taken. So this sequence of moves kind of allows black cannot take on a2 in this case because of rook a1. But guess what? Bishop e5 and knight d2 probably don't lead to any kind of advantage after knight e4, with bishop b4 being a threat. So yeah, it does feel that rook c1 is already No, I mean, rook c1, and then the reaction with d takes c5, c takes d5 is already something not to be repeated in the next game. So after c5, knight e5 is theory. Yeah, could be. Yeah, my thoughts on Fischer random, it's really weird because my experience of playing Fischer random breaks down to, a few friendly games where typically what I was trying to do is develop my stuff, exchange as much as possible to actually get the position from normal chess. So I don't have all that much experience, that means, from 960. Well, watching now best players playing the unofficial 960 World Champion. Was it official World Championship? I'm not even sure. Won by Wesley Saw over Magnus Carlsen, as you know. It was interesting, but still you can't get rid of the feeling that some of those starting positions are so unnatural. So we are too used, we are too kind of bound to those patterns we have in one of the variants of 960, which is normal chess, right? So it's really hard to look at the Fischer random as like a completely different game. So still, you look for similarities with the usual starting position, and therefore, of course, it's kind of affects your perception of this game. But it might be the future of chess. Might be the future. Well, because it's harder and harder to find those fresh ideas in the opening, and maybe that's the way people will end up playing in 10 years. Yeah, what are the clock times? It's getting unpleasant time-wise for Duda as well. He's down to his last half an hour, I believe. How come blindfold chess is not taken into consideration? Well, blindfold chess is, it's kind of a show discipline, right? So it's more of a exhibitions thing, and well, you can have a world championship on blindfold chess, but how on earth it will be different from if it's standard starting position, it'll be more or less the same. For quite a few people in the world, I believe, their quality of play will not drop significantly, and for some might not drop at all if we are talking blindfold. If you guys remember those like good old Monaco Amber tournaments, with half of them played in rapid and half of them played in blindfold. Those were, the games typically would be of very high quality as well. So it's a variant, but it's not like a drastically different variant. So, still, the opening theory would have a great impact on the game if we talk blindfold chess. Yeah. As I said, yeah, precisely. That's an interesting argument. So, basically, Chad kind of tries to catch me on my words and says that, as I said, in 10 years a lot of stuff will be analyzed. Do I believe that in each position there is only kind of one best move? No. In fact, I believe in the opposite theory, that the game is mathematically a draw, and there are few factors that suggest it's about right. Because if you think of the margin of resistance, let's say, so you might end up being 2 knights down, and it's a draw, right? I mean, no pawns, one extra knight for one side. It's a draw. You might end up being down a bishop and the rook pawn of a wrong color, or well, wrong side, you know, wrong bishop, whatever you call it. So you're a piece and a pawn down, it's still a draw. So if you think of such situations, or the famous fortresses with rook and pawn versus the queen, or queen and pawn in some cases, it kind of gives you the idea that, you know, with such a level of resistance, there should be, objectively, the game should be a draw. And therefore, I believe, especially on those like opening moves, there should be a few options for white, a little bit less for black, perhaps, because black is on the defensive, starting from first moves. But there should be like few more or less equalish options which do not change the, you know, the evaluation of the position, like in the long run, but leading to different types of position and so on. So once again, depends on what we are talking about. The chess game as the science, like analyzed by computers and, you know, those powerful cloud engines. Once again, I don't know what's going to happen with computer, with hardware at first place in 10 years, right? Or we are talking humans playing chess. Because even if, say, let's imagine that a game of chess mathematically solved. That's a, you know, after all, that's a game with complete information. So why not? It's only a Shannon's number of variations. Not so much, yeah? Does it make it impossible for humans to compete? No, it's still a game because you can't memorize all those lines, so you can still play it. Duda took on d5. Meanwhile, queen takes d5 played, and Grishuk replied with rook to c8, not going after my silly check on a5. Played rook c8, which some people in the chat were claiming to be even a better move, right? I still don't know what's wrong with my queen a5 thing, because, once again, not that many moves seemingly for white. What we didn't look at completely was knight d2, interesting. Maybe knight d2 would have saved white. It's like I just concluded knight d2 to be kind of super dangerous, and I stopped analyzing it right here. But, so it turns out queen a5 was good, but rook c8 is even better. Rook c8 is even better. So queen a5, I suspect knight d2 kind of keeps white in the game, because queen, oh, well, maybe queen d2. Maybe this position is not that terrible. Because we stopped over here, it's clear that black would have a very, very strong initiative for the pawn, but without the queens on the board, it might be not devastating. While after rook c8, black actually threatens the same, knight d3 check, and that check is really, really hard to avoid. But the queens are there, so it's really, really tough. It might be an opening disaster for Duda, interestingly enough. Yeah. Yeah, perhaps you're right, guys. Perhaps you're right. So that if a check on a5 and queen d2, you know, swap the queens played, then it's less of a problem that the king is not castled. Even though, still, believe me, it's a very unpleasant position, because you'll have to move the rook. I mean, that's a terrible feeling. You have to move the rook away from the c-file. I still insist on this being very, very promising for black. It's just that rook c8 happens to be even stronger. Queen a5, yeah, once again, I mean, depending on what engine we are using, depending on, say, on the depth of the engine, but it does seem to be that rook c8 is, yeah, rook c8 is the better move in the long run. But, you know, but the intuitive look at it as well, because, as I said, you keep the queens on the board. That's kind of the factor that is important in this position. And then people say, what, rook c3 to keep white alive? Ah, no, e4 keeps the... Yeah, that's a nice move, in fact. e4 keeps the c1 rook protected. By the way, not an easy move to spot, but Duda might do so because the situation is looking desperate for him. e3, e4, so that you keep the c1 rook protected. Might be that our line is no longer working there, by the way. A check on a5. Oh, there is also some sort of bishop. Some sort of bishop d2 is there, which is hard to believe. But yeah, it does seem to work. Yeah, knight d3, bishop takes. Ah, no, it doesn't. Knight d3, bishop d3, rook c1 with a check, the bishop's pinned, white has to go king e2, and then there is queen d5, of course. Yeah, queen captures on d5. Yeah, so in this line, black actually wins. But what I thought it was not working because of b4, and now queen a3 does not attack the c1 rook, even though the position still looks terribly dangerous. I won't be surprised if even this is winning for black, like bishop c5, very simple, bishop b4 being a threat. If queen d7, bishop b4 seemingly is devastating. Might be wrong, but yeah, but it does look terrible. e4, queen e8, what? Oh, that's an interesting line. It's good to know because e4, it's really hard to consider, to be honest, a move like queen e8. So let's see if e4 will be played, which people claim to be kind of a first move. Huh? First move of an engine, e3, e4, or rather the only move for white not to fall apart immediately. And then let's see if Krzysztof finds queen e8, which is honestly not an easy move to play, not an easy move to find. So after queen a5, queen b6 is minus and queen a5 is +2 for white. Yeah, it could be. I mean, my first intention was to declare that this doesn't work. It's just that I thought maybe this kind of a brilliancy works for black, but who knows? Maybe it's just nonsense, yeah. Maybe this is just nonsense, yeah. But you can imagine, right, once again, everything which involves defensive moves from white side and not developing basically those two guys, bishop on c1, rook on h1, means that white's position is bad, right? Bishop c6 seems decent move after e4. Yeah, precisely. That's what I was thinking. Bishop c6 or bishop e6, it kind of guarantees that black is getting very, very pleasant position, probably a better position. But a move like queen a5 check is an attempt to win the game within the next 10 moves, right? Yeah, I suspect this is like a very good position for black. But can we say winning position? Perhaps not yet, right? So we don't win any material with black. We are, in fact, still a pawn down. Same with bishop e6. Of course, black is getting fantastic compensation with all the pieces mobilized and stuff. But yeah, but a move like queen a5 or queen b6 is an attempt to win the game on a spot. Ah, yeah, so it turns out queen b6 is stronger than queen e8. And after queen a5, queen d2 is a mistake, I'm guessing, because of knight d3. So once again, using the same motif of this queen being pinned and therefore not guarding the c1 rook. So if bishop captures on d3, and I mean, you can't do anything else, it seems, right? Bishop captures on d3, white loses the rook on c1, and after the queen straight loses the other rook as well. So queen d2 is not no, I suspect this thing which I claim to be very attractive just doesn't work for black because of some reason. Don't know which one. Can I repeat the opening moves? Yes, of course. That's easy to do. So the Queen's Gambit, that was the first moment where Krzysztof spent some time because, as we identified, there was quite a choice over here. Main moves for him, for Alexander Krzysztof, perhaps being bishop b4 and bishop e7. So bishop b4 was played against David Navarra, right? Not sure on the moves order, but certainly this position was in his game against David Navarra, so-called Rogozin defense. After bishop e7, white had a choice between bishop g5 and bishop f4, so two classical moves in the Queen's Gambit. Ended up playing bishop f4, castles, e3, knight b to d7, which is, as I said, used to be super popular after 2011 Kazan candidates. Now it's sort of a little bit forgotten line. Once again, black practically fully switched to the old classical c7, c5 thing. After knight b d7, Duda spent quite a lot of time, and we were discussing like various possibilities, ended up playing rook c1, where it turns out that after c5, the thing that he has done, taking on c5, taking on d5, exchanging the knights, playing e3, playing a3, is no good because of bishop d7. Queen d5, rook c8. Duda is thinking. We were informed e4 is the only one move, but then still queen b6 and black is kind of better. Is rook c3 possible after a check on a5? Yeah, I was told the check on a5 is no good, so I suppose because of b4, right? Because people were coming up with the evaluation like +2 for white, and you don't really play rook c3 and have it as +2 for white. So it must have been b4 and then somehow greedily winning the, winning the knight and not giving back material anytime soon. Yes, so let's see what Duda will end up playing. Yeah, it seems that he's so unconfident in this situation, like getting in a really, as people claim in the chat, so Duda is a very aggressive player himself, so he would rather prefer to sacrifice the material and attack rather than being attacked, right? Yeah, precisely. A3 without rook c1 is what people play. E4 found. Nice. So at least we have the game. The game continues. E4. Wait a sec. Bishop c4 suggestion in the chat. I believe it falls to b7, b5. So once again, you'll have to move the bishop for a second time, and then knight d3 kind of finishes white off. Right? Yeah, it's kind of bad. So e4 played. Okay, let's see. Duda has like 20 minutes left. Krzysztof doesn't have much more than that. That means being move 13 for black to play, I don't really think this game will pass the time control. I don't really think it'll pass move 40. Not sure of the result though, but of course, I mean, with such a sharp position, with both players being, well, not really low on time just yet, but like potentially in a time trouble, probably everything we decided around move 40. Yeah, but kudos to Duda on finding e3, e4. That was really, really tough move to spot. Grishuk will... Yeah, where is Grishuk now? Yeah, not sure. So people say Grishuk will play bishop c6. As we were informed, queen b6 is perhaps the strongest move recommended by the engine. Both bishop c6 and bishop e6 being kind of understandable human solutions. So at least you make sure that you have a very, very pleasant position. Okay, and since Grishuk is not at the board, and it's been a couple of hours of this of today's broadcast, I believe that's usually the point where we go for a short break, and we'll be back in some 10 minutes. We'll continue with the second game. As it looks now, it might be the last game of the event. Welcome back, guys. We are back from the break, and once again, we have a guest for you. So please welcome Yevgeny Tomashevsky, 2 times Russian champion, current Russian champion, who was a guest in the Russian studio for a couple of hours, and he was so kind to pop in our studio as well for a half an hour. He'll provide us with his insight on what is going on in the second game.
Hello, I'm glad to be here and thank you for the invitation, and I'll try not to spoil anything, yes?
Yeah, so as we were discussing during the break, it does seem that Tuda was unaware of all the finesses of this line, right? So if we can have our analysis board in and maybe click through the opening stage one more time. So knight bd7, I've called this one as well-forgotten line. I don't know actually what's the kind of the modern practice is, but it seems that they switched back to c5, yeah, the good old move, the kind of Petrosian times move. So knight bd7 is not played all that much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was about young Krzysztof's opening preparation in general. I think he didn't miss anything concrete, but he tried to went for some interesting lines just to play against Queen's Gambit. I think so. I'm not sure, but it looks like. So of course you should play here a3 or c5 or bishop e2 or something like that. But if you play rook c1, you shouldn't play e3 at all. After this c5, dc5, and take on d5. No, okay, you should
so
play.
This happens.
This happens, yes, and you should play something else. Maybe not trade on d5, but if you play rook c1, I'm pretty sure that rook c1 isn't good enough at all. But it's decent enough to make a draw. Yes.
Yeah, but we were told by chat, who is like a collective, intellect, which is like really clever, using the engines and stuff, that rook c1 is actually a legit move, but then after c5 you are supposed to play some knight e5, which is
really
the move that I don't know at all. Because honestly, it looked so familiar to me, all those positions, that I actually thought it must be some theory. But it happens to be that the combination of a3 and rook c1 is simply bad.
It looks like what I pointed out in Russian stream. So imagine if you play a3 so on the 7 move. So it was quite dubious to play rook c1, and then if you play a3 and all this.
Yeah.
It's just the same position.
Yeah, it's just the same position.
And here, I'm pretty sure that you shouldn't play rook c1 here at all.
Yeah, precisely. You would develop the bishop, right?
You play bishop e2 or bishop e5 because of its position from my opening repertoire, and I know a bit what is going on here. And I think rook c1 here is bad. But I'm pretty sure that young Krzysztof didn't know how bad is it. So that's why I think he didn't expect much Queen's Gambit, but I don't know why, because of its such a main choice if he's quite satisfied with the draw.
Yeah, it's like with Grishik you never know, right? He can go for King's Indian, he can go for many things.
It seems like he's going for Queen's Gambit when he needs a draw. No, not needs a draw, but let's say he's satisfied with the draw, like today. I'm sure. But so I don't know why young Krzysztof was so surprised. Maybe he wasn't surprised. He is oftenly playing some rare lines. And if you don't know much about this line, it seems like unbelievable that white can even be worse after move 11.
Yeah, precisely. a3, bishop d7, all of a sudden turns out that it's white who already has some problems.
Yes, so I have to play a3. Sasha was thinking probably for half an hour, and during this time, I was talking about his deep preparation, and I was hoping that he will play Bishop D7 because of he rarely missing this kind of opportunities. He is not the kind of player who can quickly play something like Bishop G4 and make a quick draw instead of playing for Rubin.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I said. Like Bishop G4 would be automatic move you play in the blitz, for instance, right? You
yes,
kind
for me also, but I think that for Grishuk is another situation, and Bishop G4. Bishop D7 is a move which he can play in blitz instantly, because of he just knows this position, and he is master of transpositions and move orders, and he is pretty sure that Rook C1 is bad in this position. Yes.
yeah, it's like the logic behind that
yes.
is that I've never said, for instance, even if he knows precisely Bishop D7, that's one thing. The other
Yes.
version could be like, I know it's a new position. I didn't look at it. That means it's bad. Because
Yes,
all the decent moves for white I've already tried at home. So it means-
That's what that's what I was talking about. I think he didn't know Bishop D7, but he was thinking, and he knew that Rook C1 is not good enough. He didn't know how bad it is,
Yeah.
but he was calculating, and he quickly found that Bishop D7 is strong and puts the pressure for white.
yeah. Then Duda interestingly goes for, I don't
Queen
know,
D5.
should I call it the most principled or desperate? I mean, that's quite a, quite a brave move.
Let's say forced from 2 points from his style, and also from the objective evaluation, because of if he didn't play Queen D5, the things could even went more wrong. Yes, because of if he played Knight D4 here, it's just probably Bishop A4 and take on B3 immediately.
Seems
yes.
very bad, yeah?
Even after B3,
B3
even black can even take on B3. And it's also very dangerous. After you and Bishop
and then
A3,
you take
yes,
this, you
and
threaten
it's
check.
extremely
Oh,
dangerous. Yes,
yeah.
and it looks like almost dead position for white, and
it's
it
like
may be in
move,
fact a cheese. So
king
you should
D2.
play with this king and something like Rook C8, and this very
maybe
D4.
yeah,
a
this
lot
looks
of
terrible.
opportunities. So I'm not sure how terrible it is, but okay, it's. You shouldn't go here. In fact, as for me, the only one real alternative was Bishop D3. Bishop D3 is a kind of type of move of old guy, but okay, probably I could play Bishop D3 here. But for Duda, play Bishop D3, it's maybe it's like moral resignation. Yes.
Yeah,
Resignation.
that's what I was thinking. So for him, it's very. I mean, not only for him, but for most of young players, it's like very hard psychologically to admit you've made a mistake. And
Yeah.
Queen D5, it's kind of a logical follow-up. So that's why I played A3 and Rook C1. So then I will take your pawn.
So let's say he choose between two alternatives, only two legal alternatives, because of otherwise he was almost losing. And he could play Bishop D3 and he could play Queen D5. So Bishop D3 it's almost impossible with his type of mind, his style of play. So Queen D5 is more or less forced.
Yeah, so Queen D5, Rook C8,
And here-
E3, E4.
E4 is forced from objective point of view because of otherwise white is just lost.
So therefore E4.
And because of if Rook D1, black can play Queen B6 and it's almost winning. And after B4 compass pointing even Knight A4 is also good. Oh, no, not Knight A4 because Bishop A4 also almost winning.
Bishop A4 is almost
Yes,
winning.
and if taken Rook C5 and
Rook c5, then take on d1.
Take on
yeah.
d1, and everything is
Terrible. Once
went
again,
down, yes.
I will outline those guys who are not participating in the game. I mean, so
Yeah, of course.
that's the problem.
That's why he played e4, and it's on the move. But here it's not so easy position. So Grishuk is thinking, yes.
Yeah, Grishuk is thinking still.
Very important decision for him. Very important for now because of he has basically two main choices.
Which are?
I think no, in general. I mean, not by moves. He has more moves. For example, Queen e5 looks also very interesting. But two general choices are play just bishop c6. The first intention is to play bishop c6, take on d8, take on d8, and it's a very pleasant end game for black. Obviously, he is not in danger, and if you think about it more, you will see that black will grab on e4 with bishop and play knight a4. Actually, it's a slight advantage for black. Slight and pleasant advantage for black in endgame. But objectively, I think it's drawish.
So white should probably somehow survive this one.
Yes, I think so.
So what does white do? Something
but
like this?
I think yes.
Because e5 is too much. Yeah. No, you just lose.
I think something like bishop e2 and
castle short.
I can play knight a4 here, and you can play bishop e5. I can take on e4. No, something like that. Castle and it looks like not the worst things are happening for white.
That's one thing.
That's one thing, but it's very attractive from practical point of view. Okay, you play just bishop c6, you are never in trouble. Maybe you can create some pressure somehow. But more interesting is to play for a win here with queen somewhere, yes? Let's say queen somewhere. I think the strongest one is queen e8.
Queen e8. Okay,
Yes.
interesting because, once again, the very informed chat was kind of debating, is it queen e8 or queen b6?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe queen b6.
Yeah.
Let's think about queen a5 because of queen a5 looks principal.
Yeah, that's what I said. It looks very, let's say, very typical to me. If white didn't develop the king side,
I don't know what is going to have to be for. Yes, take on and just
then bishop c5. Yes.
Just no, it looks like too much for black. I think. Maybe somehow it works, but to be honest, I don't believe much.
You don't think so?
I think I can even grab on c5 here with rook.
Take on c5 with the rook. Rook takes, then.
And probably it's too much. Yes.
Take on d7.
And
could be. Yeah. Somehow I probably just overestimated how it looks.
Maybe, probably. I'm not sure, but it looks like you can do almost the same, but with a piece or two more on board.
Yeah. Why would you?
Why would you play
this position
without?
If you can play queen b6,
extra bishop, yes.
you can play queen b6.
You can play queen b6, but after queen b6, it's important what is going on. So what about b4 here?
b4 here.
And it's also looks like black black starts to sacrifice too
black
early.
probably has to start sacrificing the material.
But maybe too early because of it's very important that now in all these lines bishop is going to d2 and or to e3. It's the most important defensive piece for white. So maybe here I can take on c5.
Yeah, so d takes, bishop takes. So now at least you can't capture this guy.
I can't capture, but I can play
f2 is hanging, some queen d2.
But queen b2 you can continue with rook fd8. Yes?
Yeah, and I thought this, at least let's say from human perspective, it looks very attractive.
Yes, it looks also promising, of course. Maybe
who knows? bishop d3
Yes,
should be
seems to be quite promising. Yes, let bishop
d3
d3.
and then
Yes.
somehow try to win this bishop back.
But it looks like you have compensation only for not for advantage. Yes, because of
Yeah, it's like white castle's very
White
next
castle.
move. Maybe you win some material back. Yeah, that's like not obvious what we are doing. So after b4, is there a way not to sacrifice too much? Like there is knight e6. I'm
Yeah,
not sure how
knight
good it
c6,
is.
just queen d7. I have no. Maybe you still have to sacrifice.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, pawn. So that's
should
knight
be,
e6 doesn't really work. And
No,
knight
so
takes, you take on c8, bishop e4. No, that's nonsense.
it looks
No,
like
that's too much,
not
once
good enough.
again.
Yes, but queen e5 or queen b6 look tempting, but in fact maybe it doesn't work. But queen e8 is very strong because of you deviate from queen exchange and.
After before you might
I can
as
even
well
take.
take.
Yes. So it was the last variation which we discussed with Elmira, and I think before and after before I can even play bishop c6 first.
Ah, yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, because
it's even,
with queen on b6, there is always this threat of bc5.
It can be even stronger because of you should go with your queen probably to a2 maybe because of queen d1 I have something like bishop a4.
Yeah, queen d1 is bishop a4. Queen d2, it's straight up knight b3, take the exchange.
Maybe or queen e5 somewhere, I don't know.
Queen e5 is...
Yes, also looks a bit dubious.
Yeah.
But I can even grab the pawn back. I mean, just knight e8. Knight e4, sorry.
Knight e4, yeah, knight e4 is possible. I'm looking at some moves like knight e6 as well, because bishop f6
Yes,
with the
bishop
tempo.
f6.
Yeah, this looks very pleasant for black indeed.
Yes, it's just bad for white. Yes, as I know, white should play bishop e2 here.
Bishop e2 and try to
Yes.
castle, and then once again very...
And after bishop e2, black has to be... I think that's what Sasha is thinking about. This is a key moment of the game.
He actually has played the move, and chat informs us, and I also see this one. Queen to b6 was
Maybe
played.
queen b6.
Queen to b6 was played.
Maybe it's even stronger because of somehow it can work. It can work somehow because of if it works, maybe black is winning.
Yeah, it does work according to chat, because before bishop e6, bc5, bishop c5, queen d2, the move we were looking at, it turns out bishop a3 is super strong. So
Yes.
in fact, our rook f d8, as much as it is attractive, it kind of helps white to develop. But bishop a3 attacks the rook and creates a threat of bishop f4. So white is not on time to develop.
It's very cute. So queen b6 looks tempting, of course. It's
And now let's see if Duda has something to say about it. b4 plate, people say.
what
b4 plate, indeed. Yeah,
what
we
to
do
do
get.
what to do instead. Yes.
Yeah, wait a sec. So b4 on the board. Is there any way for white to deviate from this after bishop e6? Because people were claiming there was... Yeah, bishop e6, queen d4. Is it an engine line?
Maybe queen d4. Of course, I was thinking about it, but it's a bit unhuman.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, I don't really think you go for it. It's like the line that people provided us in the chat was rook f d8, queen e3, and then guess what? Of course, it is a5. Very easy move to find. Yeah, I mean,
So you just have a pin. So let's make this pin more terrible. Yes, because of your queen is now unprotected.
and something like this, people claim to be the line.
And how bad is it for whites?
This I don't know. This I don't know. It does seem to be.
Of course, it seems like pleasant. Black has pleasant initiative, but I'm not sure how bad it is. At least Duda created some fight in this position.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm glad that Sasha didn't play something boring. He is in good shape here, and he obviously understanding that it's already should be bad, and at least almost bad for white.
Yeah.
And he just played for attack, and that's nice.
Yeah, so far we have b4, position after b4 on the board. Black doesn't have that many alternatives, right? But bishop e6 is perhaps, yeah, when you play queen b6, the first thing you consider is white going b4.
Wasn't it played?
b4 played and bishop e6 isn't just yet.
Oh, why? What to do? Yes, let's think from human point of view. What can we do?
Yeah, maybe there is an alternative to bishop e6.
What can we do else?
Not much, to be honest.
Maybe
some knight if
maybe somehow rook fd8 he's thinking about. Maybe a rook fd8, maybe something like
rook
this.
fd8, and once again, if bc5, just
bishop c5, and to have other bishop moves, yes.
Yeah, so like if queen
but
d2,
maybe you don't need to take on c5 immediately. I don't know.
After rook fd8.
But looks like no any other ideas, yeah. But
yes, seems to be terrible otherwise.
Maybe something like bishop e3.
Yeah, bishop e3, pinning the knight on c5.
But okay, bishop e6 and
again
bishop e6
bishop
and
e6.
take
If bc5,
queen a5, yes.
now already a check is here. It all looks so terrible for white. Bishop d2 and then take on a3, perhaps.
Yes, just take on e3. Yes.
Take on a3.
Looks losing, yes.
Has to be lost. Yeah, feeling is like it has to be lost. And rook fd8. You are right. Rook fd8 is on the board.
Ah, really? He really rook fd8, yes.
Rook fd8 is on the board, chat, claiming this one to be an inaccuracy, but really, guys...
Yeah, but it's just from human point of view, this is only alternative for playing bishop e6, and it's, for me, it's very hard to understand that after bishop e6, black is so good. Because of, it looks like bishop 6 take, bishop c5 and queen d2, and you see bishop d3 after rook fd8. That was the operation which Grishuk
probably didn't like.
Would like to avoid, yes?
Yeah, and bishop a3, to understand that bishop a3 is so strong, bishop a3 with bishop b4 idea, maybe it's not that easy.
Yeah, bishop.
Even though when you have it on the board played, it's clear that white is busted, basically, right?
Yes, of course. And here you will not play anything besides bishop take on a3 because of you realize that rook fd8, bishop d3 is fine for white, and you play bishop a3 and winning the game. But okay, it's not understand. It's not easy to understand, of course.
Yeah, so then after rook fd8, once again, what are the options for white? Probably has to take on c5, right?
Yeah, this is a position which should be analyzed in 70s or 80s with letter of readers, yes, in old magazines.
Yeah, right. So
some improvements, yes. So we could discuss this position more and more. But now, any guy with engine
with the computer, yeah,
just can say us why we can't calculate anything.
Yeah. So after rook fd8, people claim that bishop e3 leads to equality, and capturing on c5 perhaps is just bad.
Yeah, but capturing on c5 looks. We also didn't see anything good for white.
Ah, yeah.
Because
bc5, bishop c5.
This is how it works for black. Because of now, after queen d2, I have a lot of other bishop moves. Probably
not
bishop
only
on
to e6,
not only to e6, to a4 to b5.
Maybe bishop a4, right? Then this one's hanging. There will be some rook d1 motifs later on.
Maybe even just bishop c6 or something like that.
Yeah, but wait, where is white?
No, just no square, yes.
Maybe there is no
maybe
square.
queen
Bishop
a2,
d3
yes.
still.
Bishop
d3 still.
D3,
Maybe that's what he does. Maybe that's what he does.
So why it's so strong with bishop on d7? Where should they go? Yes,
Where should we go? Bishop b5 is kind of counterintuitive.
Yes, but
Might
I have
work though.
queen b2. Yes, only move.
Yeah, queen b2, but then I thought we are winning like this. I mean, we are certainly winning the queen. I'm not
yes,
sure.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm not sure.
No, queen a5 here.
Queen a5 is better, yeah?
It's just mate
No,
in
queen-
3.
Queen a5. Well, not a checkmate in 3. He has to play queen d2, but then
no,
we are
that-
winning, yeah?
Almost
Yeah, queen a5
checkmate.
is a nice
bishop,
pawn.
just bishop on b5. Yes.
Yeah, queen a5 is a nice
Just
pawn.
winning immediately. Yes.
Because otherwise it would be like winning the queen, but kind of giving away all the army. Bishop
Yeah.
d5 and
Not good. Not
No,
good
it's-
enough. Not good enough for black. Yes.
maybe not good at all, yeah,
But,
because queen g2, rook f1, all the pieces are
Yes,
still
but
there.
mate in 5 is better. Yes.
Yeah,
Than
yeah.
lost in 25 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this seems to work, and that means white has to play a move bishop e3. Interesting.
Yes, it's not easy. Yes. But okay, after bc5, bishop c5, what to do? And that is the position in which Duda should play good enough because of it's in fact the only move.
Yeah. So once again, an engine line that chat keeps us informed with is that white can play bishop e3. Black seemingly has to react with bishop e6. I suppose the knight cannot be taken anytime soon. So queen e5, bishop to f6. If I follow this precisely, rook captures on c5, bishop captures there, rook takes on c8, and in
Easy
the
line,
end,
yeah.
white captures the queen.
No,
So
okay,
rook
rook
takes,
c8, bishop b6, bishop c3.
Bishop
check.
c3. White maybe is capturing the.
King d1, maybe king d1 or king e2, king e1, king e2, king e3, maybe yes.
Maybe you do this, right? Black captures there. Black is kind of never worse in
Never
this
worse,
position.
of course, but maybe.
But maybe white is not worse as well.
king
Like white
e3,
goes there,
bishop d3, b5.
develops the bishop, probably survives.
Yes,
Probably white is
looks
surviving
like
there.
maybe white is not even worse really. Yes,
Bishop b2.
bishop d3. Yes.
Bishop d3. Yeah, bishop d3 is important. Otherwise,
got
might be
check.
rook c1 or bishop
Or
c1.
rook
yeah.
c3, and bishop
Rook
d3,
c3
and
is
then king e2, and
When we collect it,
b5.
it's b5.
It
Let's say
looks-
check, king e2.
fortress like yes, rook c1 or rook
Or
d1.
rook
Yes, of
b1,
course,
b1.
pleasant position for black, but it's kind of fortress for white.
Mhm.
Yes.
So probably will survive if this happens. Yeah.
Yeah, but how to find all of this?
Not easy at all. I agree. So rook fd8. Duda is thinking. Let's not forget he's very, very
Low on time.
low on time already. Like up to 10 minutes left, I believe. Yeah, and I know, Evgeny, you'll have to go at some point. So one question from the chat that people like you to answer a lot. Tell something about your work with Kramnik in Berlin. That's what I didn't even know you were working with Vlad during Berlin candidates.
Yeah, I was working with him even before, also, and during Berlin candidates. And first, I need to say that I'm very lucky that I was in time to work with him when he didn't quit yet. Yes, he hasn't quit
so-
yet.
so you mean before he retired,
Before
yep.
he retired, yes, I was extremely lucky to work with this great person, and he's extremely unusual in his work, and it was extremely nice experience for me, and I liked not only work but also conversations. A lot of conversations. He liked to tell about everything, and
Yeah, I do know him a little bit, and what I understood that he has an opinion on many
he
things.
has
I
an
mean,
opinion.
not only
And
chess.
I was completely impressed by him like a personality. not even about his chess work. Every Russian schoolboy knows that he is working hard and he is great in chess, but I was even more impressed which kind of person he is, yes. And it was like a cultural shock for me, yes, but very pleasant. And I also, we worked together with Anish Giri, yes, and it was also a very nice experience for me. And Anish is also great, and I need to say that I'm just lucky to work with these two guys.
Okay, so thanks for popping in, Yevgeny. I believe that's the moment we have to.
Yeah, unfortunately, I need to go in the most interesting moment, but okay, I spent a bit time in the Russian stream, but of course I don't want to leave the transmission while Duda is thinking about Bishop e3, but what to do.
Yeah, so we will return in a couple of minutes, guys. So just a quick break because the players are very, very close in the time trouble. Yeah, we have to let Yevgeny go, and then I'll be back shortly.
Thank you.
Welcome back, guys. Let's continue with the second classical game of the final in Hamburg. Once again, that's a last classical game for sure, and if any of the players wins, this will be the last game of the event. First game between those two finished in a draw. So now young Krzysztof Duda with the white pieces finds himself in somewhat unpleasant situation, it seems. Well, so B takes C5 plate. As we know with the help of a chat, with the help of an engine, that this is supposedly a losing move. bc5, bishop e3 was needed to keep the balance. But yes, that's very good when you have the engine running. By the way, is it 3 minutes 50 seconds left for Duda or 2 minutes 50 seconds? Something, yes. So that's really, really problematic situation on the clock. 20 minutes for Grishuk, so no time trouble just yet for him. bc5 supposedly loses after bishop c5. That's, I suspect, is the move. Minus 0.87? That's not too much, I have to say. If it's 0.87, yeah, let's see one more time. Let's get our analysis board rolling. We've concluded with, along with Evgeny Tomaszewski, that bishop c5 has to be played. Now f2 is hanging. Various bishop moves available. By the way, we never looked at alternatives to queen d2. Yeah, and then the conclusion was that queen d2 is supposedly bad because of bishop b5. I'm not sure if it's correct, but it does look so. The queen is attacked. If you move the queen, say to b2, black seemingly has this tactic. Bishop captures on f2, queen gives a check on a5. Now after bishop d2 on knight d2, it's just a checkmate in one move because the bishop is pinned. Therefore, you have to go queen d2, and then black starts collecting your stuff. So first, rook c1 with a check, then rook d2 with a check, winning a bunch of material, it seems. Yeah, bishop c5 played. Bishop to c5 played. So as I said, queen d2 does seem to be losing, but how about any alternatives? How about any alternatives for white? Queen d2, bishop a3 wins. Okay. Same like in the previous line. Good to know. Yeah. But how does it win? Yeah, that's what I missed, guys. A rook to take c8, you can actually take with the bishop. The rook on d8 is protected, so the queen's attacked. In any kind of intermediate moves like bishop e3, there is always queen b1. This is how black wins. Yeah. But as I said, white will be looking for an alternative to queen d2, and Duda has played bishop f1 to e2. Bishop e2 now holds for white. That's what so that's the best move, perhaps. Is the only saving move. Okay. Cool, and Duda finds it. So it's interesting, he mixes up the moves, like not so good moves, like bc5, even though from human perspective, once again, the most obvious ones take the piece. But whenever the situation becomes really critical, he comes up seemingly with the best, defensive solutions from the engine. Bishop e2 seemingly holds for white. And now it's on Grishuk to find the very best sequence for black, which I'm not sure. Yeah, guys, I mean, if you claim bishop e2 holds, it would be really lovely to see if you could provide me with the sample line there. Because so far, what it seems, is bishop f2, king f1, trade on c1, go bishop... no, once again, it's silly what I'm saying. I thought bishop b5, right? Like attacking the queen and rook d1, but then, once again, the same problem. Black wins the queen and ends up being ton of material down. So that doesn't really work, yeah? Doesn't really work. So bishop e2, what? Then what black's supposed to do? It's like, I feel like you take on f2 sooner or later. You might start with the other bishop move first, but then you take on f2 later. Bishop f2 is minus, bishop b5 is plus. Yeah, okay. So bishop f2, king f1, I suppose. What do you do then? Or maybe you're not trying to win immediately. Maybe you just play the position with white king being on f1, like go, I don't know, bishop e6 here or something. Just try to play this one. So wait a sec, bishop f2. Now I'm getting confused because you say bishop f2 loses and bishop b5 is kind of the best move. Don't quite understand it. So you mean this? That kind of works other way around, yeah. So now with queen a2, that's how black wins. It's check over there, checkmate from d1. Yeah, that's what I was trying to achieve with different moves over. That's understandable. Again, not a checkmate just yet. White still has knight e1, but that's still a checkmate. So it turns out, after bishop b5, white will have to look for this. Will have to go for this. But how does that work for white? Isn't this one just terrible? Any sort of queen sack? Not really, right? So you move the queen, supposedly to a2. Or b3, maybe it's queen b3. Let's see. Krzysztof plays bishop b5 on the board. So bishop b5 is the only move, and it was played. Okay, cool. Do we have 2 or 4 games? No, it's only 2 games in this final. As I said, that this is a last classical game period, and yeah, last classical game of the event, and maybe last game at all. Bishop b5, rook takes c5 is the only move, yes, but I don't see the follow-up. Yeah, I do understand you have to eliminate the c5 bishop, because otherwise it's too much, yeah? Whenever you move the queen, it's bishop f2 finishes whites off. So after bishop b5, wait a sec, bishop b5, rook c5 has to be played. For Duda with minutes on the clock, it's really tough, yeah? Rook c5 is the only move which does what? That's the question. Because I don't really see a follow-up. You take on c5, black captures back. Black captures back, and then what to do? There is also queen b3, people say, but how is it? Or it's queen b3 after rook c5. That's correct. Yes, you go there. Point being that after a check, you still have king f1, so d1 is protected. Now that's a nasty check because you can't play bishop d2 because of a check on c1, I suppose, right? But what you can is you go to f1, but then. And you also have knight e1. That's a bomber. Because I thought some brilliancies should work. Queen a3, queen takes, check, checkmate, but it's not a checkmate. There is knight e1. Let's not forget this knight is still there. Will Duda be able to find this rook c5, though? Yeah, if he doesn't find rook c5, he's like lost completely. Right now he finds. That's what I'm saying. So Duda is, well, on... Quite low on time. He's amazing at finding those resources to keep the game going. Otherwise, you know, if not for rook c5, we've learned that his position was resignable. Yeah, right. So there's queen b3. I completely missed the fact that there is queen b4. Yeah, thanks very much once again. There is still queen b4, so queen e5 doesn't work. What does work, though? So bishop takes, for instance. How is this how is this endgame? Black regrettably has to take, and then the risk king e2, and then white is just better. White is just better. Okay. So rook takes e5, played. Perhaps queen b3, and then let's see what does Krzysztof have there. Does he have anything better than going for this endgame, which does seem to be honestly in white's favor? So perhaps that there is still... Well, how about this one? Like, I would really want to keep the queens on the board with black, but at the same time to create a threat so that white cannot castle short, right? So if I'm moving the queen, like queen, say queen e6, queen a6 or queen c6 possibly. Now queen c6 runs into, no, there is rook c1, wait a sec. Could it be that this one's good? Point being, of course, I want to reply to bishop b5 as rook b5, and that's what it seems to be winning position, because e4 is hanging with a check as well. So after queen b3, black can play queen c6. Okay, thanks. Duda is the beast, you're right, but will it help him in this case? Because, you know, like couple of minutes left and a very, very complex position might be objectively bad position. Yeah, Queen C6 is best after Queen B3. Yeah, good to know, but once again, not an easy move to spot. Someone said Queen F6 is an alternative, which is a quirky move, to be honest. Yeah, Queen F6. I suppose after Bishop B5, what Black does is this check, right? But then once again, King E2, Queen H1. How is that position? Don't know. I mean, if White manages to stabilize, it's completely unclear. This is completely unclear, right? So Queen to C6 played. Queen to C6 played. Once again, strongest move by Alexander Krysiuk, and both very low on time, I believe. Yeah, Krysiuk still has more than 10 minutes for Duda. It's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes left. And now that was just a glitch. Yeah, he's on 6:46. Pardon. So still has some time. Jan Krzysztof Duda and about 15 minutes for Alexander Krysiuk. Yeah, precisely. Krysiuk can play with 30 seconds on the clock. But I believe Duda is not bad as well. If we talk very short time controls, I don't really think, once again, I repeat myself, I don't really think this game will go through till move 14. Now it's move 18, very complex position, and you know, Bishop E3, people claim to be the only move, but how does that work? Could it be some case where the engine actually is wrong? You do this, and then does White survive this one? And how is it he is surviving this one? Because White will not be able to castle. Basically, White is sort of paralyzed. Oh, no, wait, White is threatening Queen C2. That's important. Bishop D3 played. So once again, whenever we see that the only move is required to survive, Duda finds it. That's amazing. Bishop E3, bishop takes bishop, you mean. So bishop takes E2. But then White kind of surviving, right? Bishop F3, or wait. Is it bishop F3? Still the feeling is like, still the feeling is like something has to be there for Black. The feeling is something has to be there for Black. Yeah, guys, stop this. Like, Krysiuk has to resign. No, he doesn't. Doesn't have to. Yeah, it does seem that Krysiuk was playing very, very strong, apart from not playing bishop e6. Yeah, once again, let's go back over there, where after Queen d5, after b4, we were told that bishop e6 was practically winning, right? So Krysiuk has played rook d8 instead, after capture on c5, bishop c5. Duda once again switches to sort of a beast mode. Yeah, b takes c5, seemingly not the most accurate. But then after bc5, bishop c5, finds all the best defensive moves, starting with bishop e2, after bishop b5, rook c5, very important. So rook c5, queen b3, and queen a5 check. No, wait, queen a5 check is nonsense, right? Queen c6 was played. And once again, the best move, bishop e3. So bishop e2, right? Yeah, bishop e2, and if bishop c5, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, not bishop f3, but queen e4. Queen e4, and what do you do then? You probably should try to block the e file. And it's, oh no, that's terrible, rook d1 is coming. So if this is the right line, then black is still winning in the end. So after bishop b2, I suppose the move is not to capture on c5. But what else do you do? If you take over there, isn't it just like lost? Might be one of those positions where engine tends to underestimate. Yeah. Ah, so you wanna see, guys, what's there? Yeah, bishop e3. Isn't this one just lost? I mean, you'll never ever. It's like white is a piece up. Ah, yeah. I see where it's heading towards. You have queen f7, and that's correct. And king f7, knight g5, white indeed wins. But after queen f7, king h8, does white king survive over here? I don't think so. I don't think the king survives on e1 because you'll never be able to castle short, and a move like queen d3, you know, is too much. After queen e4, queen e3. Okay, let's see. Queen e4, queen e3. But then this is a terrible endgame, no? Or it's not? Ah, you trade. No, you can't trade. Yeah, bishop f3 wins. Bishop f3 wins. Bishop f3 wins because rook d1 checkmate is a threat. You've got to capture the bishop, and then it's check from b1 and capture the rook. So that's kind of bad. It's kind of bad. Okay. Bishop e4. Now people, yeah. People start confusing me. Bishop e3. Ah, queen takes e4 here is strong. Yeah, that's once again, that's not easy to play. He finds it though. That'd be a shocker move, right? But wait, but how does that work? Queen e4, bishop b5, does it work somehow? No, that's probably bishop e2, queen e4, you mean? Bishop e2, oh, sorry, bishop b5 here. What's the solution? I don't really see one. I mean, unless it's like something either very simple or... No, I don't see. So knight 19, queen e4, right, bishop b5. What do we play for black? Ah, rook c1. Ah, guys, I'm being silly. Rook c1, the bishop spinned. And then perhaps just take the rook, right? With king on e2 being as weak as it is. Okay, so very, 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 very important moment for Vrishuk. Once again, in case of bishop takes e2, oh, quite answer. Bishop e2 played, yeah, that's much more human, indeed. Bishop e2. Now, as we agreed, king e2 looks terribly dangerous, at the very least because of queen a6, king e1, and, you know, white is effectively a rook down, as someone said in the chat. So Vrishuk decided to go for bishop e2, bishop c5. Now, once again, you guys confused me in a chat. So queen e4 or bishop f7, or bishop f3 this has to be. I'm really, really confused. So once again, after queen e4, we said queen f7 apparently loses because of king h8, right? And then too many threats. So what you have to do is queen to e3, bishop f3, trade. No, you can't, once again, you can't trade the queens. And Vrishuk decided to take on f3, so he misses queen e4. He misses queen e4, so he captures on f3 instead, queen f3, queen takes c5, and then white will be able to castle. That means all advantage is gone for Alexander Vrishuk. So queen e4 was or was not winning, guys. You confused me in the chat, huh? You mean there, queen e4, knight d2, queen g2? No, but that would be like a winning position, I suppose. King e2, queen h1. Well, huge advantage for black. Okay, maybe not winning automatically, but a huge advantage at one for black. But now, after bishop f3, queen f3, everything seems to be gone for Alexander Krysiuk. Queen takes c5, castle short, and yeah, he missed it. But once again, I'm impressed with Duda finding all those defending moves, like kind of mixing very bold ones with set necessary moves to stay alive, and he manages to castle short in the Queen's Gambit on move number 22. Not very often, you know. Castle to save the game, yeah. Queen e4 was strong, it turns out, yeah. So Krysiuk really, really missed. And now, after castle short, I believe there is not so much to be done. Yeah? Not so much to be done for black. Well, technically, black is still the one who is trying. Now that I'm kind of trying to calm down a little, black is still the one who is trying after, say, pushing his pawns b5, a5. There is still some advantage for black, but, you know, compared to the great advantage he had, really. So you guys were discussing, now thanks chat for clarifying this one out. You guys were discussing queen takes e4 immediately. After that, it was something that would save or not save white. Yeah, but once again, can someone tell me how on earth white was surviving in this line, because I don't quite see it. So there is like bishop e3, right? Bishop e3. Queen e3, yeah, I've seen a comment in the chat that after queen e3, queen c2 seemingly wins on the spot, but I believe my bishop f3 is good enough, to be honest, because you can't trade the queens. I've initially missed this one. I thought, trade the queens, castle short, black is only up a pawn, but queen e4 runs into rook d1 checkmate, right? So it was seemingly an option. In that line, white plays bishop e3, right? No. Yeah, bishop e3 technically keeps white alive, but you can play bishop c4, as people said, or I don't really see what's wrong with bishop a6. You do have queen f7 tactical shot, but after king h8, how do you survive? It's like queen b1 is a threat, anywhere. d3 is a threat. So it seems really, really dangerous position at the very least. Anyway, it's gone as of now. So castle's short was played. Krysiuk went with b7, b5, h4, to my surprise, h7, h6. So now white can continue with rook d1, perhaps? And now, so it's still somewhat problematic for white now that I have understood. This is not such an attractive option because black trades and takes the pawn on a3. Rook d1. What was rook d1? Wait a sec. So rook b1 played instead. Okay, he didn't want to play rook b1 one move before, because there white still has the back rank issues, right? So after queen c2, for instance, the rook would have to move passively back. You can't take on b5 because a checkmate on the last rank. After h4 played, makes the situation different. So now white can play rook b1. But still, it's, yeah, now I realize that black still has some chances at the very least. Like going rook d2, for instance, to target the f2 pawn. There'd be some chances, perhaps. We'll see. The game is by no means over, right? But that's really, really impressive, right? Really impressive that Duda managed to survive this one. Well. So still, of course, some chances for Krysiak in the forthcoming time trouble, I believe. But seemingly, Duda managed to shape up. And, well, actually, after this move that I said, rook d2, there is seemingly queen f5. Simplifying it to a rook endgame, which once again will be really, really tough to win, if possible at all. Yeah. So not much to do. Black is still preferable because of queenside majority. That's one factor, and the other factor, rook d2 is not played just yet. Black controls both open files. I mean, that's important. Imagine like black plays stupid move, white plays a good move, black plays another stupid move, and white kind of controls the c file and the d file somehow. Then there is no advantage for black whatsoever. So, but being the combination of factors that black controls both open files in the position, plus he has the potential of creating a passed pawn with a5, b4, Krysiak actually ends up playing a7, a6, guarding the b5 pawn for now, maybe planning to relocating his queen. Still should be some chances there. Yeah, honestly, h4, I tend to agree with chat. Well, some people in chat claiming that h4 is a bit suspicious. Yeah, I'd probably consider not pushing it 2 squares forward. h4 is not typically the move you're playing. It's like in such positions, it's more of a g3 type of position where you want to be solid at first place. Because it's not clear if this pawn is going anywhere further, right? And it might just be hanging at some point. Okay, so h6, rook to b1, and a7, a6 played. Now, one of those positions when it's, still there is some tension. If we forget what was happening before, because I do understand it's very easy to declare now from now on, nothing can happen, because we do remember how rich, how complex the position was. But yeah, imagine it's a kind of a new game, and we have this. It's still a position full of life, it's still the position full of tension, and with limited time on the clock, it's really, really tough to navigate that. And who knows, maybe for Jan Krzysztof Duda, maybe this is less comfortable situation where, there is not a lot of tactic involved, but he has to, every single move has to be played with great precision. Rook b1 to b3. Kind of allowing black to invade with his pieces, which is a bit of a surprise. I suspect this leads nowhere, right? Because it's the check from h1 is only one check, and in fact, it might be the situation where white is winning after rook c3, because check over here, king hides on g3, and then when white's going to give a couple of checks, check from c8 and then followed by check from f5, it will turn out to be terrible for black, right? So the idea of queen c1 followed by rook d1 is not that great, right? Rook b3 is the best move. Oh, wow. That's really, really impressive. Yeah. So rook b3 was the idea to challenge black's dominance on the open files, either by rook c3 or rook d3. Stockfish first line. Oh, impressive. So what do we do with black then? How to keep the game going? Because it feels like a moment where you activate your rook, like going rook d2 or something. But then once again, you struggle after rook c3. Because, for instance, queen d6 threatening something on the back rank. It actually doesn't lead anywhere. There is a check. There is a check from f5 where you are forced to go queen g6. I don't think white risks anything. And that's what Krishuk... no, wait. Krishuk's rook is still on d8. So he first plays queen e5. Wait a second. Instead of rook d2 with rook on d8, he first plays queen e5. But yeah, but then white at the very least has, once again, has this regrouping with g3, king g2. Or might as well play rook d3, because I don't really think the queen's endgame is all that dangerous. No, but Duda decides for g2, g3. Stockfish recommends a5, but when it is? Well, guys, the suggestion to attack the e-pawn with queen e7, and if this rook e8, well, could have been played, but then once again, white lifts the... you could take on h4. Yeah, queen e7, in fact, now that I see it is attacking h4, it could make sense. All right, so what has happened was queen e5, g3, and rook d4 now. Rook d4, once again, attacking e4 pawn. That might be a bit unpleasant. Might be a bit unpleasant, unless rook b4 happens, right? Because rook e3 is kind of passive. Then black can continue with... Rook e3 played, surprisingly. But then black continue with a5, yeah? Defensive engine. Okay, not sure. At some point, there is a feeling that Duda will have to try to trade the queens, accepting a tough but defendable rook ending. Because if he keeps, well, just passively guard his e4 pawn, then black might get too active on the queen side with a5, b4. How much time's left for them? Yeah, that's a very good question. So once again, 3:46 for Krishuk, 4 minutes for Duda. So roughly same time on the clock. And my prediction about this game not reaching move 40 was not true. It seems now it's move 27, so it's very likely. So it's either they'll agree a draw earlier, or the game will inevitably drag through move 40 and might as well be a draw in the end. a6, a5 played. Well, we have to agree it's kind of a big miss by Krishuk already, but once again, kudos to Duda for finding all those moves. a5, queen to g4. Once again, possibility to trade the queens at some point if needed. How many more moves? It's move 28, so 12 more moves. But the situation is clarified enough, so for the time being, I would not call this one a terrible time trouble. Don't really think it's a terrible time trouble from now on. It's kind of tough for Krishuk. Let's see. How do you make progress here with black? Oh, well, you try to push the b pawn forward. That's what Krzysztof is after a5, yeah? So a5, b4, and then you see what to do. Yeah, it's tough. I do agree it's tough to make any sort of progress for black. And moreover, if you, yeah, what's Krzysztof is playing b4, so now after a takes, I can imagine that this is just a draw. Not ready to claim it, but you can imagine this could be, you know, just a draw. Yeah, I do understand that black is able to put the rook behind the passed pawn, but his king is kind of far away. Yep. The king is really far away. So b4 played, the pawns are traded on b4, and now let's see what Duda comes up with. You might argue there is kind of nothing threatening, right? White is like not really afraid of anything. But yeah, but in the time trouble one tends to make active moves, right? Trade the queens and draw. Well, maybe not that simple, right? Maybe not that simple. It's like trade here happens, say rook, or maybe rook d5 is more precise. Rook d5 attacking there. Say white goes. You put the rook behind the passed pawn. I'm wondering if this is possible to win. Because black king is really badly placed. I mean, with king somewhere around h7, it would be just a winning position. But with king on h7, it's still not clear. Check and queen b7 could be. Check and queen b7. Yeah, maybe white doesn't need it at all. Yeah, maybe you give a check, king h7, and you just keep your stuff. Yeah, but anyway, queen on c8 is played. King goes to h7. Let's see now. Yeah, I do suspect the rook ending has to be a draw, but once again, how do you decide on playing this one during the practical game? It's not that easy, right? Queen b7. Now, the only scenario that actually kind of works for black is that if he switches to some sort of kingside attack. But I'm having difficulties doing it. Rook d1, king h2, queen a1, I thought could be some threats to white's king, but after e5, queen from b7, guards h1 square, white once again threatens some sort of a perpetual with queen e4. Well, not a perpetual really, but queen e4 check might be an idea. So this kind of all-in attempt to go for an attack doesn't really work. And in general, like if you're trying to get to this king via first rank, what you want to have is your queen in front of your rook and not vice versa. Queen b7, f7, f6 played by Alexander Krzysztof. So once again, simply banking on the fact that it's a little bit inconvenient for white to make his moves. But you are right, guys in the chat, those who are claiming that it's not clear where black is supposed to make progress. I don't see it. I don't see it. I think that's a huge miss by Krzysztof, and once again, it was an amazing defense by Duda. So identifying that he has played really bad moves order. He has spotted as early as at move 12 that he is in trouble, but he was able to find all those defensive moves. So that's impressive play. Yeah, and we can, knowing the engine moves, we can blame Krzysztof for not finding this, not finding that. Let's agree he has found enough of really tough moves to spot. And let it slip very, very close to victory. So once again, if we go back over there, it turns out that bishop e2 was not good enough, it seems. And still, some claims that queen e4 would have won at, some like very, very deep computer analysis. But how do you know it when you have 10 minutes in the game and you're uncertain where you stand? So that's really tough. That's really, really tough. By the way, looking at this position, there might have been other moves. Okay, let's forget it. Let's go to the current position where Duda has played king to g2. Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Yeah, like Duda quite frequently gets to a suspicious position and then not ends up not losing it. That's really, really nice. Capture on f3 was a mistake, so still queen e4. That was the move I was looking at, right? e6, you go there. Probably not enough. The fourth rank is not... well, it is long enough. It's actually some tension still, right? There is actually some tension still. Yeah, so something has happened here. Something has happened with the video. Well, I'm not sure what can I do about it. Queen d5 played. Looks like the best chance for Grishuk is to trade the queens, but then, yeah, then still not much to be done. Yeah, queen d5 played, e d5. Very likely just a draw. After a few more moves, rook to d4. You know what, guys? Honestly, this is just a draw. I mean, if he... well, how to play it the most precise way? Like, you put the rook behind the passed pawn, and after rook d4, you go h5. This has to be a draw as well. This has to be a draw. Because it's like almost impossible for black to make progress. This h5 might be, kind of an important move to play. And then how do you make progress with black? If black does this, rook b7, and good luck running with the king. g7 pawn is hanging, right? I'm not sure if f4, maybe it was better just to wait, yeah. So not much to be done. Yeah, e d5, rook d4 played. Dead draw. I'm not sure about dead draw. How do you make this draw after king g6? I mean, it's got to be a draw this way or another, but still there is some tension. Ah, you mean you go there and you go d6. Maybe that's the way to make a draw. Well, right you are. That's a draw. Initially, I've missed d5, d6 here, so I thought, yeah, the pawn is gone and maybe some... well, in this case, actually, if the pawn is gone, it's a huge chance for white, yeah, but there is d6. So that'll be a miraculous escape by Duda, really. Yeah, of course, if they trade the pawns, yeah, precisely. If they exchange the d pawn for a b pawn, there is nothing left to play with. It's just a question of next couple of moves. Yeah, and I thought this is a draw as well. Like go into e7, rook d5, put in the rook behind the passed pawn, go h5. I thought that was supposed to be a draw as well, but in this case, at least the black is a pawn up, so he will end up trying. But then, yeah, after rook beat much, Grishuk can do here. Yeah, I do agree that it is amazing. It's clear that Duda misplayed the opening. It's clear that Grishuk overall, I mean, his level of accuracy in this game was very impressive. So overall, Grishuk has played a very good game, but Duda managed to survive it. Yeah, that's really, really, really surprising. So king, yeah, guys. So rook b3 played, king g6, king f3, king f5. Yeah, I was looking at this, and then after that move, and king e5, d6 seemingly makes a draw. Oh well, maybe you don't play. Maybe you don't play king e5 here. Maybe you do this, for instance, and after that move you go to g4. Can this be any chance? Can this be any chance? I don't really believe it, but who knows? Duda never really blundered. Yeah, well, he has played quite a few inaccurate moves, but when there was like a really point he could blunder, really the point in the game where he could blunder, he never did so. Yeah, king g6, king to f3. 4 moves only to breach the time control. Show the clock. I mean, not much to be shown. I believe last minute for Grishuk, but yeah, basically playing h5 means he more or less agrees on a draw, I suspect. King e3. Or, yeah, rook d5, that's a draw, ladies and gentlemen, right here, right now, after rook b4. And we will see a tie-break tomorrow. So that was an exciting game, and we can still keep discussing on missed opportunities by Grishuk. But then, once again, it is impressive how players navigated those complications. Yes, not without an error, but it was chess on a very high level, I can assure you. And Duda, yes, deserves to be praised for, after everything falls apart for you in the opening, then still to gather himself together and to be able to survive there. Yes, it is somewhat disappointing for Alexander Grishuk's fans, but he will have another chance tomorrow, as well as his young opponent. So Grishuk will have the black pieces in game 1 of the tiebreak. We've just seen the drawing of lots for the colors of a tiebreak. So that seems to be the law. Whenever it is a final, there has to be a tiebreak in the final. That'll be the case in Moscow, where Grishuk ended up losing the tiebreak in the final against Jan Nepomniachtchi. That happened to be the case in Riga, where Maxim Vasyelograf and Shahryar Mamedyarov battled it out all the way to game number 7, to an Armageddon game, won by Mamedyarov. And here, once again in Hamburg, after 2 draws in classical games, young Krzysztof Duda and Alexander Grishuk will play the tiebreak playoff tomorrow. So I believe that'll be it for today. Once again, before I sign off, let's remind that all of you guys that please make sure to join tomorrow at 3 p.m. I believe no changes in the time schedule. I actually need to get a confirmation on this one. I don't think there were changes in the previous stages. I do think it will be 3 p.m., but please double check. Just in case, please double check it. I'll have to double check myself. I believe it will be 3 p.m. Hamburg time. And yeah, once again, have to say thank you to those who made this event possible, to all the sponsors. That's for Sagro, the strategic partner of the entire Grand Prix series, Algorand, blockchain partner, Pelosieta's Shipyard, the partner of the event in Hamburg, and Kaspersky, cybersecurity partner of the Grand Prix cycle. Thanks to those companies. thank you guys in YouTube chat for keeping up with my not always accurate variations, correcting me, informing me on what the computer was recommending. Thanks for an interesting discussion, which really helps when you cast one sole game alone. And that'll be it for today. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow, there is no doubt. I don't know how many games those two are going to play, but the match will eventually be decided in one of the players' favor.